Okay, can everybody hear me? Yeah, we're seeing a couple head nods, thumbs up. Thank you all, appreciate it. This is 112 participants, that's outstanding. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am calling this meeting back into session. We do have a quorum. I am waiting for a few school committee members to still join, but we can proceed with some of the housekeeping items while we wait for them. All right, Superintendent Picard, if you would not mind, please start with section 3.
Sure. I recommend that minutes pertaining to the litigation and allegations of misconduct for Robertson Green Beretta remain sealed.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion by Craig, seconded by Linda Lyle. Any discussion on that from the committee? I see none. Those in favor? Aye. Do I have any opposed? Do I have any abstaining? Do I have any recusals? All right, I count that as unanimous. Donna Siskavich, are you on? I can't hear her. Okay, Donna's now the co-host. Okay, she is on. Donna, I don't see Bill, George, or Donna Chambers yet. So that's just for your reference. Okay, item 3.2.
I recommend that minutes pertaining to the matter of emergency drills remain sealed.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion made by Craig, seconded by Linda Lyle. Any discussion from the committee? See none. Those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Any recusals? All right, that's unanimous. Number 3, please.
I recommend that minutes relating to the privacy of students and their records, approval of home instruction requests remain sealed.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion by Craig, seconded by Linda Lyle. It's open for discussion. I see none. Those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Any recusals? Oh, I count that as unanimous as well.
Excuse me, Ryan.
Yes.
I was not able to unmute. Bill, George, and Donna still not present.
I think
Bill, George, and Donna are still not present, although
Okay.
Donna just
Came on.
joined.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So Donna Chambers is now here. So yeah, I count Bill Day and George Abbott still missing. Okay, this brings us to item 4, disclosure of executive session votes.
Okay.
Mr. Luzon.
Chair. Thank you. We had 6 votes in executive session. The first vote was concerning executive session minutes of November 10th, 2020, NEA ESP negotiation update. It was 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention, 0 recusals. In favor, Callahan, Day, Grover, Giusti, Luzon, Lyall, Macruso, McAllister, and Stahl. Abstaining, Abbott. Second vote was concerning executive session minutes of November 10th, 2020, NEA certified staff negotiation update. 10 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention, 0 recusals. In favor, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Grover, Giusti, Luzon, Lyall, Macruso, McAllister, and Stahl. Abstaining, Abbott. Third vote was of executive session minutes concerning executive session minutes of November 10th, 2020, emergency protocols. 10 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention, 0 recusals. In favor, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Grover, Giusti, Luzon, Lyall, Macruso, McAllister, and Stahl. Abstaining, Abbott. Fourth vote was concerning executive session minutes of November 10th, 2020, home instruction requests. 10 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention, 0 recusals. In favor, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Grover, Juicy, Luzon, Lyall, Macruso, McAllister, and Stahl. Abstaining, Abbott. Fourth vote was home instruction requests. There was 4 votes, and they all were the same. It was 11 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, 0 recusals. In favor, Abbott, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Grover, Juicy, Luzon, Lyall, Macruso, McAllister, and Stahl. The 6th and final vote was to come out and visit these 124 people we have with us tonight and return to regular session. It was 11 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, 0 recusals. In favor, Abbott, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Grover, Juicy, Luzon, Lyall, Macruso, McAllister, and Stahl.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. This brings us to section 5. Superintendent Picard.
Okay, please join me in congratulating the following. First, our high school boys cross country team, Class B champions, and for placing 5th in the Rhode Island Interscholastic League State Cross Country Meet. They qualified for the New England Championship. For the 5th straight year, the Chargers have placed in the top 6, but due to COVID, that meet will not take place. The next one, I'd like to congratulate Sullivan Cummins, placed 7th at the Rhode Island Interscholastic League Boys Cross Country State Championship, the first public school runner across the line. Congratulations, Sullivan. We also are congratulating our high school girls cross country team for taking 4th place at the Rhode Island Interscholastic League State Cross Country Meet. They too qualified for the New England Championship, but that meet will not take place. And we'd also like to thank the Charahoe Rotary Club members for volunteering their time on Saturday, November 7th to clean up the campus courtyard and library grounds. Our sincere appreciation and thanks to Liz Pasqualini, Gary Stevenson, Ella Stevenson, Grayson Stevenson, Susie Scanapiaco, Frank Hopkins, Tim Babcock, Amy Babcock, Chloe Babcock, Kim Daigle, Merrill Moon, Dana Hall, Lillian Hall, Paul DeFonte, Chuck Hogan, Jeff Dusha, Michelle Dusha, Hannah Dusha, Beth Hogan, Stu Douglas, Larry Dunn, Lindsay Pettit, Savannah Fisher, Dylan Fisher, and Kelly Ezema. I was on site that day. It was a great day and we had beautiful weather and they did a great job. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, this brings us to public forum. If those of you who are not familiar with Zoom, go to the bottom of your screen. A little icon for participants will be there. Please click on that. Participants list will pop up on the right-hand side. You can scroll down to the bottom, and there is an option to raise your hand. If you raise your hand, I will then call on you, and you could take part in public forum. Public forum is an opportunity for the public to make statements or comments not related to anything on the published agenda. I'll give it another minute. Okay, I don't see hands. I think I know why everybody's here. Why don't we move on to business?
Okay, so the first is the request for the monitor variance. I recommend approval to submit a request for a variance for the 2021-22 school year for the requirement which stipulates that bus monitors must be provided on all buses transporting students grades K through 5. This request, like the years past, only applies to the secondary bus runs for the grade 5 only.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion by Craig, seconded by Linda Lyle. This is for approval to submit a request for a variance for monitors. This is open for discussion. And for committee members, there's so many cameras open. Since you are all co-hosts, I would appreciate if you would just unmute yourself and call out my name so that I can call on you. David Stahl, I see your hand, and then Donna Chambers.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. Is this something we've done a lot of years? I'm in favor of it, ready to vote for it. Is this something we've done a lot of years, and is there a way we can make a more long-term or permanent adjustment?
We've been doing this every year since I've been on the committee, and I think there's a specific reason why we do this in order to get the variance, and we do it annually. But I don't know your question whether or not we could just make it permanent. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. Gina, do you know?
Ned's online too, but we are required to do it every year per the state.
Okay, I thought we were.
All right, well, let's do it again.
Looking forward to it. All right, Donna Chambers.
Yeah, my question is I would assume the monitors are monitoring the wearing of the masks on the bus. And if that's not an issue, then I'm okay with not monitoring. But I think now more than ever, we need monitors on the bus.
So we, in the past, there are monitors on the elementary buses, but there have never been
Right.
monitors on our buses for the main campus. It hasn't become an issue. It hasn't been brought up as an issue or a concern. We have much fewer riders, as you know, Donna, on the buses this year. But it's something we can look at in this year's budget. They weren't budgeted for ever.
Okay. And it's not an issue. As long as it's not an issue for the fifth graders, I understand that the idea of this is because the sixth graders do not need monitoring and they're sharing the bus. But as long as the masks are not an issue and the driver of the bus is monitoring that, I'm okay with this.
Yep, they've been wearing their masks on the bus.
Okay, good, good.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this? All right, I see none. Closing discussion. All right, committee. Those in favor of the variance? Aye. Thank you. Do I have any opposed? Any abstentions? Any recusals? No, I'm counting as unanimous. Thank you all very much. This brings us to business letter B.
So this is I have a presentation for the continued in-person learning and plan moving forward. It was asked to be on the agenda by committee member Lisa Macaruso, but I am going to provide the update, and all the principals are on the call as well. So they're able to ask anything specific should something arise after the presentation. And Dr. Manlove is co-hosting one of the slides with me, and I appreciate all the work she's done with us as well. So I'm going to share my screen.
All right, while you're pulling that up, folks, we're going to go through the entire presentation before we start taking questions. So you can go ahead and hit your hand up icon if you have questions. I will be calling on committee members first and as far as priority, but we will get through all the questions as they come up at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. So as we all know, Charahoe's motto is all kids, all the time. And I think as a district, our teachers, our staff, our administrators, our community have stepped up to be able to make in-person learning what it is. It's not what anything that we expected, but we're making the best of a very difficult, challenging situation. But none of our work would be possible without the amazing staff, teachers, and administrators that we have. Right now, families have a choice for in-person or virtual. Registration for Q2 and trimester 2 have been complete, so everyone that needed a seat was assigned. We also recognize that with the holiday coming up in the state pause, because those seats were already assigned, we would allow the accommodation of families temporarily DLing distance learning for the opportunity during the December break, before the December break, to allow for any family that was feeling stressed about the current state uptick. While our current numbers look much better than the state, we still recognize that that comes with stress, anxiety, and fear. So our principals are ready to make those accommodations for those that would like that. We also recognize that this is 2 days before Thanksgiving, and many of our families wanted to have a voice but could not be present. So we sent out surveys for our elementary, middle, and high school families, as well as our faculty and staff, and as well as our high school students. So you can see here that we had 1,756 families respond, 347 faculty and staff, and 383 high school students. This is how the data was called out based on those surveys. You can see that the majority of our elementary, middle school, and high school families do prefer full in-person learning 5 days a week. There is an option at the very end where there was an other column. Some families took the opportunity to either reiterate why they felt full in-person was important, or why they actually were happy that we continued our full distance learning option. So they took those options as well. You can see faculty and staff was a little bit of a shift from the families. The 40%, they would prefer the Monday distance learning day with Tuesday through Friday full in person, with our high school students agreeing with that, the Monday distance learning day, Tuesday through Friday full in person. And just to be clear, even if we have a Monday distance learning day, that's a work day, so people would work from the buildings. I know that there was some confusion around staff around that, so just to clarify. So the partial was not put in for the elementary school families, as it's not something that our youngest learners are, the goal is to get them to stay full in person, and they are more stable pods actually in our district, K-8. They're very stable. They don't move throughout the building like the high school does. So we're able to keep a better contact list around those pods. So like I said, all the work that we've done so far would not have happened without the amazing faculty, staff, and students in Charahoe. And on the line with us is Dr. Manlove. I did see her present. And she has been a great support, not just to myself as the superintendent, but our nurses. We've held, starting at the very beginning of the year, some admin nurse debriefs. We've recorded those for anyone who could not make them. And the nurses are kind enough to keep me on their threads and keep me updated, and all of us on the same page, so we can calibrate to make sure we're all doing that work together. So if Dr. Manlove wouldn't mind, she's going to sort of give the perspective from the physician side of this. As you know, that's where some of the both staff and family concerns come in.
Okay, so I'll do my best, and then we can kind of see if I missed anything. I'm still at work, so I still have a mask on. So I guess I see my role as going through some of the medical data to try to put the scientific aspect on it. And I realize that there's a lot of emotions and there's a lot of fear surrounding this. And I get that, and we do have to take that into account also. So the number of cases in our school still remains low. Less than 5 in the high school, was less than 5 in the middle school. I don't know if that changed, Gina, because of the last outbreak. One of the elementary schools hasn't had any, the others have been 1 or 2. We no longer necessarily report whether it's a student or staff member. So that's why there's some unknowns there. We know that kids are not known spreaders in school. It's a very controlled environment. At the very beginning of the school year, we know that the numbers of kids getting COVID were greater in the kids who were full distance learning than in the kids who were in school. And I think that's really important to remember. Even if we have our kids at home, they are still at risk. And the teenagers are probably more at risk because they're going and doing things that are social that we only have so much control over as parents. It's interesting that the United Nations actually has the position that the risks of being out of school are greater than the benefits of staying at school. And we need to think about not just our own individual kids, but our community. We know there are kids who have food insecurity. Maybe they're not eating anything if they're not going to school. Academic parity. If you have parents who are right on top of your education, great, you're gonna do okay. But if you don't, and your parents aren't interested in your education, then that's gonna be really hard to keep up with your with the students. We know that the reporting of child abuse has gone down significantly. It's not because child abuse has gone away. It's because it's not getting reported because the teachers aren't laying eyes on these kids. And mental health. Kids are social. They need to be with other kids. The number of cases of depression and anxiety that we are seeing in both kids and adults right now is at really high proportions. All the psych hospitals are seeing way too much, and we're heading into the holidays, so it's only going to get worse. I think our goal needs to be not only just for the students. Obviously, we want to keep our students safe. We need to keep our staff safe also. And with that, the evidence is really in mitigation. Wearing the masks, wearing a mask decreases the likelihood that you're going to get any viral particles by about 80 to 90%, depending on what kind of mask you're wearing. So like a surgical mask, like I'm wearing, is about 90%. And we're seeing not only, if you're near somebody, you might get exposed to COVID, it's the amount of COVID you're exposed to. So fewer virus particles, you get a lower viral load, therefore you get less sick. So that's all good news that we can really do something about. We've been having a lot of trouble. I hope, Gina, that's not stepping on your toes, but contact tracing has been hard because the state isn't really able to do the contact tracing they told us they were going to do. So staff has been amazing. The principals and nurses have been amazing. And we're probably casting a wider net of kids who might have been exposed than when the state comes in and do it. So then you kind of back off a little bit, let some more kids in. I feel like it's been a game of whack-a-mole the past few weeks. And I think that's what it's going to continue to be. But if we can keep the majority of the kids in a stable situation where we are safe, then that's really been shown by evidence to be the best thing for our kids. I think that's about it.
So Dr. Malin's absolutely correct. The most difficult sort of has been the Department of Health not having the staff. So they recently redesigned, actually the administrators, myself, the nurses had a meeting along with other districts in our pod to discuss the protocols and the fact that now we will have specific liaisons. We have noticed just in these last 2 days, a much faster response time, which has been great. We have direct lines to real live people, so we don't have to wait on the hotline. So that's allowed us to move very quickly, which is great. They heard our feedback, and we're happy to be partners in this work. We just want to make sure that we are giving our families timely information. And I myself, as a parent, did not receive timely information, so that can be a struggle. And we want to make sure we do what's best for our community. So we also, the school committee over the summer also implemented the employee assistance program, which is not just for any staff or member of the Charahoe School District, but even their family. So if you're struggling in any shape, way, or form, this not only allows the employees, but their family to have supports in place, which has been great. And Kristen Merritt, our Human Resources Administrator, is able to provide additional resources and send out specific emails for those that are looking for more support. The Education Outreach Center, like I mentioned, has been an additional support. They've come out, and I have a slide a little later on about them, so I'm going to hold on that. And just today, RIDE is working on a launch starting next week, where the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence will be providing teacher courses around stress, anxiety, and fear, so that we can really attend to the needs of our teachers. So this, the education operations team has come to on site twice. We had them come to the Charahoe High School to be able to review our plans, as it's our largest population, and it is the one that doesn't have stable pods. They do run a 4-period day, so they're in 4 pods a day, if you will. But just the sheer numbers, we wanted to make sure that our protocols of passing time in the hallways, because students are definitely closer together, but because their passing time is short and they're wearing masks, they gave us the green light that we have actually very good protocols and that we are an exemplar for many districts. And they shared many of our work with other districts that were struggling to find a way to get open. So we now have, like I said, regional contacts, and actually, like I said, they mentioned Charahoe often as an exemplar district, and that is because of the faculty, staff, administrators, and school nurses, Dr. Manlove, the community's efforts around really taking this seriously. So we thought that it would be important to share with you the current students are in person and how many are distance learning to be able to share across the schools. So when we pulled the data for this meeting, Ashaway was at 132 in person with 61 distance learners, Charleston at 183 with 49 distance learners, Hope Valley 212 with 37, and Richmond 306 with 83. So as you can see, the majority of our families, just like the survey shows, would prefer in person. For our middle school, we have 591 in-person learners and 295 distance learners, and 812 at the high school in person and 312. And again, that number does shift. We've had questions a lot about the concurrent learning. As you can imagine, if you've become a close contact, students are shifting in and out of distance learning almost daily because someone in their family was a contact, they're getting tested, they don't feel well, they're in quarantine. So the flexibility actually needs to be there, and it's anyone's game about who's going to be in distance learning for the day, because we ask everyone to stay home if they have a symptom. So that's probably our most challenging, is the concurrent learning and getting teachers as prepared as possible. They're doing amazing work, but we all recognize that it's not easy. So we received today 300 additional air purifiers that Jason Sullivan, who's also on the call today, will be distributing across the district. And the purpose of the HEPA filters will allow us to close our windows. While fresh air is always the best, with these actually work even better. I will not pretend that I'm the expert. So if there's questions around this kind of air purifier, Jason and Ned are both on the call to provide that additional information, but it will allow us to make sure we're pulling those particles out of the air. Where the outside air dilutes it, this removes it. So this is actually a better way to do this. So Dr. Manlove mentioned it. One of our biggest struggles has been, time has been the close contacts and really the internal process. And we have a live internal process document with our school nurses, with the admins and myself, that every time we have a case, we review, add, and revise based on our learning. And again, we're really proud of the work we've done. It's not easy to stay into an open scenario, but what if it means that we're doing what's best for kids? Chara, like I said, the motto, all kids all the time, I'm happy to do. And I know our faculty and staff are happy to do whatever we can to make sure we're doing what's best for kids. So the principals have all the documents at the ready for all of the pods. The teachers have assigned seating charts. We know the distance between the desks. Desks per CDC guidance are 3 to 6 feet. Some schools are able to get 6, others getting more closer to 4, based on the size of the room and the number of in-person learners. So based on that documentation, we determine within the perimeter who would be considered what we call a possible close contact. We then provide those names, and what we've been doing now is notifying those families prior to messaging so that they know that their child's been identified and that they still should be able to receive a call from RIDO. This was glitchy earlier. It's getting better right now, but we had some concerns even over the past weekend that there was a delay. Like I said, the meeting we just had to fix that was Monday. So we have seen with our information having to go through yesterday that it was much faster. But we do have internal protocols. And like we said, we're in constant contact with the school nurses and the admins to make sure we give each other the support necessary to do this. So some important reminders for us, students who travel out of state, we recognize that with holiday breaks, parents and employees are traveling. So if you do travel to a state that has a 5%, you are required to do the 14-day quarantine upon return. That's for our students, which in our policy that we implemented at the beginning of September. And we are asking our families, the minute if they do take their child for a test, for whatever reason, we know some families have contacted us and said, we just did it because we were going to go visit grandma, and Gina came back positive, so I'm letting you know. So it's great when they do that, because then we can get the ball rolling very quickly and we can assess the situation. The difficulty comes in, and the question has been asked often, like, what's the magic number? And it's often not about the number of cases, but the number of contacts and the timing. Getting a call on a Sunday night at 9 o'clock is very different than getting a call on a Saturday. How many contacts, how many interviews have to be done? So when we make determinations, and while we do believe we're becoming more well-versed, it's still a learning curve, and we're sure that we can do things better, and we're happy to do that. But our goal is really to think it's case by case, and really our shift from in-person to distance learning is definitely one where we take it very seriously. We do proceed usually more cautious, just to err on the side of caution, so we don't put anybody at risk. but we recognize that it provides a challenge for families when that happens. And what we know with the pandemic is flexibility is something that we all are going to need a little bit more of your patience and time, especially as we get closer and closer to hopefully a vaccine. But we recognize that we have mitigation, we have strong protocols in place. I do have the principals on the line as well to be able to share, but our thinking is our current plan is working. We recognize that 5-day full in person is the best option for our families, and the majority of our families do prefer that. We also recognize that for any reason, if we were shifting our plan, we would have to take a serious look at our specialized populations that would need more. Like, for example, we have our alternative learning academy, we have our special education population across the district, pre-K through 12, and they may need opportunities for 5-day schooling. But right now, I think the overall feeling of our administrators and myself is that to proceed moving forward, and it's working, but we recognize that there's a lot of debate.
All right. Thank you, Gina. Appreciate the update. Okay, I'm going to open this up for questions, but since most of them will be directed to Superintendent Picard, I'm not going to shuttle everyone over there. Gina, you can just field them to your panel of experts as needed. I have a number of participants with their hands up already. Any committee members? I'm going to start with Lisa and then George. Okay, thank you. Lisa?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's so good to see 130 people on this call. And I recognize that every day things change, but I want to give you a very brief, far more brief than the presentation we just had, point of view from a school committee member and from a parent I went into the buildings as Ben had requested. I was able to observe 3 different buildings, meet with a number of different administrators, speak with teachers, nurses, and some families as well. So I also want to just tell you that in terms of any particular bias, I have twin daughters, one who needed distance learning in order to thrive and one who needed in-person learning to thrive. Right, so there's no implicit bias that I brought into this conversation around which may or may not be better. The strengths of our community, Gina just highlighted beautifully, right? And I saw all of those, right? Every visit that I had, I was graciously accepted with little to no notice that I was coming, which was on purpose. All of the administrators I spoke to were raving about the efforts, just as Gina just did, of our educators, of our community, of our support staff, without question. Mass compliance was terrific, right? Students and faculty as well. And this is a really interesting note. When I was going around, I said, I'm here to find out what you need, right? I don't know, I'm good at solving problems, but I need to know if I had a magic wand, what would you want? Would you want DL? Every person I talked to said, no, we want to teach our kids. No, we want our kids. And I said, well, do you need a substitute, like a distance learning long-term sub, something to help you? They said, well, no, because I want to teach my kids. I want to do it. I don't want to farm that out. I don't want to lose agency over my students. They're mine. It was phenomenal. Okay, but what are the concerns? The concerns are that they need a beat. They need some time, and they needed some time, not at night, not after the kids go to bed and get back to going to working on their lessons at 9 o'clock or Saturdays and Sundays. But they needed some really meaningful, constructive working day time to be able to sustain what they were doing. That's what I was hearing, which is a little different, Gina, than what you were just saying about everyone saying 5 days all in person. I was given some different feedback. And that one DL day a week, one day in which the students were still engaged in learning, but it would be asynchronous, meaning they'd have activities that were planned out by their educators, that were standards, right, based, that they were engaging, but they were asynchronous, would allow the teachers to work on the duality of lessons that they're trying to do, right, their DL students and their in-person students, would give them the opportunity to have some office hours, some follow-up, some parent-student conference time to really dig into an issue or just reconnect. And then also give them the time to collaborate with one another as well. I thought that was an absolutely brilliant idea and one that's quite reasonable. Looking at the data that Gina just gave us, I'm in Ashaway. 61 students. Yes, if you look at that number, far more students are in person than DL. Yes, 61 kids. This is a little tiny town. There are 61 students that those, I don't know, we have like 10, 15 teachers at Ashaway are creating packets and materials and supplies and packaging them up. I saw them, laying them out on tables, waiting for families to be able to come in and pick up those materials and get those home to kids. I saw it with my own eyes. 61 is a lot for one school. And then when you think of the total number, I just saw we have 1,000 students distance learning. That's 1,000 assignments per kid, right? Like think about really what that is for our teachers. So I'm going to pause there, listen to the whole community discuss this, but I do want to kind of let you know, Chair, that my intention is to be purposeful. At the right time, I do want to make a motion towards having a single DL day. I have the language for that. It may or may not pass, and that's okay. But when you think the time is right, I really want to concentrate the conversation within the context of emotion so that we can do our best to try to get some resolution for what our educators are going to need in order to sustain the good job that they've been doing.
Understood. Thank you, Lisa. George Abbott.
Yes, a parent approached me and he would like to see parent input when the decision to close the schools is made. It's basically, I'm relaying what he said.
All right. Thanks, George. Okay. Ms. McAllister.
Yes, thank you. I want to just mirror what Lisa spoke about. I was able to go into Charlestown yesterday and observe the schools, and I have to say I was so incredibly impressed by the work that has been going on. When you speak to administrators and teachers, though, teaching in those two platforms is very difficult. Even if you only have maybe 5 children, that's a lot when you have a classroom and also those distant learners. Somehow they've been working overtime and able to create what I saw was classroom communities. Somehow they're able to work in those conversations with children that make them feel part of a classroom, and that takes a lot of expertise and time. So I'm with Lisa all the way on this, that they need planning time and they need to be able to put those two platforms together in a meaningful way without putting themselves, I don't know how they're doing this. They're doing an incredible job, but they need to have the time and maybe even some expertise on how you deal with these two platforms at once. It's a very difficult situation, and I have so much gratitude and thankfulness to this whole Chariho staff and families on how they've made this happen. But that's my one big piece to this, that they need time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I do not see, oh, David Stahl. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, as we go into hearing from more parents, I want to chime in right now to echo, really, I'm with Linda and Lisa on this. I have 3 kids that are doing in classroom now and 2 distance learners in my household, and have been watching all of them and watching all the parts of it and how it's working. And it's all working remarkably well under the circumstances, and teachers are doing a fantastic job. All of their teachers are really doing a great job. So, but I do see the stress of it and the difficulty and the challenge of it. And if it's possible, because I think we're going to be in this again. Now we're in the long game conversations. And I do think for it to be done well and sustainable and not burn people out, I would love to see some of that preparation time. So Mondays as a distance learning day with the teachers having a chance to plan and catch up. I'm in agreement with that. The only other thing I'd say, because I don't intend to comment on it again tonight, is as we listen to parents and other folks, I'd also like to hear from Vincent maybe as to what his perspective on how teachers feel about this, as well as the administrators, to make sure. I don't want to do anything that the teachers are not going to find beneficial. And I know everyone isn't going to have the same mindset, but I want to look out for them in terms of avoiding some burnout.
Thanks, Dave. Linda Lyle.
I too, I'm going into this with an open mind. I want to hear what parents have to say, community members and staff. I was with Linda at Charlestown Elementary School, and what I heard was that there may be some issues with scheduling if we went to a Monday DL day. So I'd like to hear from, like David said, I'd like to hear from some staff or administrators on what the impact would be on learning for that particular day. Because, like, for instance, specials, some students only have specials on that particular day, so then they wouldn't have art for the rest of the year if it was on a Monday. If the schedule can be altered, changed at this point, I guess, like I said, I have an open mind about the DL day, but I actually would like to hear from the educators is what the impact that would be if we went to a DL day.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to start. I don't see additional committee members with hands up, so I'm going to move to public. I'm looking forward to this section. So I'm calling you on in order. So we'll start with Robin Woodmansee.
Thank you, Ryan. I made sure to raise my hand right away, so I was on the top of the list. Thank you. I wanted to thank everyone for their time. My biggest thing is I think we need to remember that we are also talking about our area here in Chariho. So while our cases are low relative to the rest of the state, we all can, say they are definitely much higher than they've ever been and seem to be climbing. So as a parent, that is a big concern for me. It is also the holiday season. So a lot of people are going to be traveling and gathering and making their own choices. So I personally feel that it's a great time for us to be proactive instead of reactive. So I know we're kind of talking about a few different things here. One is a possible pause, as the governor has brought up before, after the holidays or between the holidays. Another is if the teachers are a modified schedule. So I'm very supportive of a pause because I do have worry about the spike that may come after. I know it's very difficult for parents. So I understand that, but I also have the concern about the spikes. I also just wanted to see if I know distance learners are able to, in person, are able to go to distance learning at any time. Possibly, could we consider having an option for like a holiday distance learning option where they could still come back after that holiday time? So maybe not necessarily for everyone, but an option to be able to go distance learning from after Thanksgiving to after the New Year for those who find it necessary. A big part of this is our staff. And as everyone before me has said, they've worked tremendously hard. They are running a marathon for numerous months. And I do worry that a lot of them are going to be burned out. So I think we really need to listen to them. So I see a lot of them on this call and I encourage them to please speak up. I know it's difficult and hard. There's a lot of bosses on the call, but it is very important that we hear directly from you because you are the frontline workers in this case. That is all. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Robin. Gina, do you have a comment on the pause question? I know it's something that Kristen had brought up at our last meeting. Yeah, you're muted.
Sorry. In my messaging last week, because Q2 has started, and we've already have the assignments, any family can do a temporary DL where they wouldn't lose their in-person seat because they've already done it. They would just need to contact their administrator and they could go to pause until after the new year if they wanted. We actually have our system set up for that because we do that with students who are in quarantine. So that they just need to let their administrator know and then they can do that with them.
Perfect. Thank you. Next, I'm just doing a quick scan here. Okay, next up we have Stacy Bolmetis.
Trying to unmute myself. I just have a question about the survey results that were shown today, because and I took the survey, but I don't remember. But when I look at it, I see, you know, there's option 1 in person, and then there's 3, at least for the middle school, where one of my students attends CMS. There were 3 options for distance learning, 3 different sort of models or choices. And so when I looked at that screen, I saw 40-something%, but then there's 3 columns with different models. And if you add those up, it was really close to like a 50-50 split, whether we should have distant learning models or in person. Does that make sense? It's because there was 1 option, in person, yes or no, and 3 options for distance learning.
So no, I'm actually
gotten that wrong though, but
it wasn't for distance learning. So let me clarify. So there was 1 option full in person Monday through Friday. There was 1 with the Monday distance learning day and then Tuesday through Friday full in person. And then there were 2 partials. A partial is a 50% where only half the kids attend school at one time by the alphabet. So 1 partial model would have been similar where you have the similar what the high school did it when we opened. It was Monday DL and then Tuesday, Wednesday, A through J came in, Thursday, Friday, another set of students came in. And then the other partial was alternating weeks where you were green week and white week. It wasn't just
right, but understand that like that then that unless people could people pick multiple options in terms of
they could pick, well, they could select other where they could give us a reasoning, but there was not these were models that were typical that you would see in the
I'm just saying I don't think it gives us a clear answer or a clear mandate. It might look at the onset that the mandate is for full 5 days of distance learning, but I think the number of options for partial needs to be taken into consideration in terms of what was really the community feedback.
So right, so for partial for the middle school it was 19% preferred the partial, and for high school 22% preferred a partial.
But what also for the middle school preferred A and B days and the third other option?
No, that that is the A and B day. That's okay. That was 19% for middle schools. The other option was 24% wanted the Monday with Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday full in person.
Right. So what I'm saying is when I look at it, it's very close, not, you know, when you combine those different formats.
I would just be careful only because there's more, like, for example, going 4 days in person, I would be worried that a parent who wanted 4 days in person and a parent who wants 2 days in person is very different. I would just be, we'd have to be careful of that because it's not the same.
And then I did email in a question, Ms. Picard, which was what sort of data currently, I know it was spoken to that the data currently is that, or previously or at the beginning of school, virtual learners were showing a higher rate of COVID than in-person learners, and what is the actual data nowadays?
as far as for the district, we're seeing, yeah, we do see distance learners testing positive as well. I don't have an exact number from the very beginning, oftentimes because they're not in school. So it's a different level of our involvement with the Department of Health. But I wouldn't be able to speak. Maybe Dr. Manlove knows that.
Oh, it's fine. Just wondering. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kristen Haxton.
Oh, hi, Ryan. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Sorry. I just wanted to say I'm Kristen Haxton from Richmond. I have a student at the elementary school and a student at the middle school. They're both currently in person, and I was very concerned about, as an in-person learner, being able to switch over to distance learning temporarily. So I really do appreciate you clarifying that, Gina, that for the holidays, we could opt for that if we wanted. So thank you very much for that. I did also want to say that I saw the results of the surveys, and I feel like the teacher's response, I think I just hope that you guys really take into consideration that the majority of the teachers are asking for extra time to, you know, work on their plans for the distance learners. I do have a lot of concern about burnout for the teachers. And I mean, I know we're all under large amounts of stress, but I do hope that you'll consider some modification for them. And then I do have a couple of specific questions about the HEPA filters that you were talking about today, the 300 HEPA filters. Do you know if you already have the filters for those, like the replacement filters, and on what cycle are you planning on changing the filters?
Yes.
I also have a question. Oh,
no, go ahead. That's your second.
Oh, I have a few. Do you want me to just give you them? I figured I would give them all to you, then you could just answer. I'm new at the middle school this year. My son is in 5th grade, and so he had some additional students at come rejoin his class from distance learning. And I was curious, I was hoping to get an updated information about how far apart the desks are in his classroom. And I didn't know to whom I should direct that question. And then I was wondering if it's possible, I know this is asking a lot, but when we receive, as a parent, when we receive a notification that there's been a positive case, I'm wondering if there's any way that the district could say, okay, now if you haven't heard from us, you're not a close contact. Because I find myself waiting and wondering, have I just not gotten the call? You know, can we go out? Should we not do something? And I know in other schools, I've heard that they do have that sort of system where they let families know not only that there has been a case, but that everybody who was a potential close contact has already been contacted. And I think those are my questions. And I just, again, want to say thank you so much for all the work that you guys are doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. These are great questions. I'm going to wait. I'm going to do the HEPA one last because I'm going to let Jason or Ned take that one because they know. I want to say I think it's a yearly change, but they're different. There's two we have, so I want to make sure we have the right one. The middle school desks, Mr. Zennian's on the line, but I'll look for him. I believe all the middle school desks are 4 feet apart in every classroom, unless it's the large music classroom, Mr. Zennian.
All our classrooms, when we started the year, were at least 4 feet apart. Some were up to 6 feet. As students came back in, I would have to, if you told me, if I looked up the student, I can look up exactly. The desks have been moving a little bit as more students came back in, but we are at least 3 feet in every room. We're beyond what the requirement by the Department of Health is.
The notification, actually, that was a good point, Ms. Axton. So we've actually, I hope, I don't know, maybe if you haven't noticed it. So Mr. Zenni and I have updated the middle school messaging, the last two we've sent out, and we've said, if you were a possible close contact, you've already been notified by Mr. Zennian's team. And if we didn't hear back from us, it's because we were waiting for the confirmed list from RIDO. When that list comes back, then if we've told you you're on DL, and you're not on that list, then we would follow up. And then, so I'm just gonna, so Jason, if you want to jump in the HEPA filters and basically, we do have everything we need to be able to change them, but they're different depending on the filter.
Okay, hi, Kristen. So the filters that we received today, the filters are not washable. The housing is washed on a regular basis. So probably depending on how much dust is building up as they're drawing in the air, it could be bi-weekly that they would need to be wiped down. And the filters, as Gina did speak to, they are rated for 3,000 hours. So basically that would be a yearly use. And they would be changed before the start of each school year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll have, let's see, Danielle Raddick.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
I have students in a wide range of the Charahoe district as Hope Valley Preschool, Richmond Elementary School, and Charahoe Middle School. And I've kind of been taking some notes, so bear with me with this. I have a question regarding, I understand where somebody's perspective says, you know, I think the 4-day in-person is a good option with the one-day distance learning day. But someone stated that it was stressful enough for the teachers having the, you know, say 61 students in one district distance learning. Wouldn't that be added stress having the whole district being distance learning for 1 day a week for the teachers? Wouldn't that be harder for everybody? Is my first question. My second question is the benefit of switching to that learning model to the 4-day in-person and 1 day distance learning a week, as opposed to staying on the 5-day program. I also, a big question I have is children with IEPs and our younger students. My daughter personally has an IEP and is in the special education classroom. And I know that they have their own, their pod, so they really don't go anywhere but their classroom. But my concern is, how would they be incorporated in this plan? Would they be a concern? No, honey, I'm not done. Hold on 1 second. Would they be a priority per se? I mean, I don't know. I know every child is a priority, so I don't want to sound like that, but I'm not sure how to word the question that I want to ask. Like, how would the plan and models change for the IEP children, I guess, is the question. And my last question is, my child's in the middle school, never got a call from the school about being a close contact, but I got a call from the Department of Health about being a close contact. So I'm concerned. I know that there's a lot of confusion, I think, is what I'm understanding, between the two happening and things. I did receive an email saying that there was a positive case and that we would contact you, but I never received that contact of being a close contact, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense, because sometimes what happens, and if we didn't get the confirmed list from Rido and they did an interview with either a family or a teacher, your child may have been noted based on an interview and not based on a seating chart because of additional information. So that's,
Okay.
That's a good point of clarification for us. Actually,
Okay.
these are all great questions. What's better? I don't think anyone anywhere can tell you the best model that exists. There's no success criteria. We don't have that yet, right? So we're all figuring this out as we go, and we recognize that providing as much in-person learning as possible, doing it safely is the goal. My understanding is that, yes, this definitely is, teachers are being asked to do yeoman's work, and it's not easy. And there's definitely opportunities where, we've tried our best to build in more opportunities for planning and collaboration, but as you can imagine, it's definitely difficult. So I couldn't honestly tell you that, yes, the Monday DL day is better than the full in person, is better than the partial. I think it depends on the situation and it depends on the learner sometimes. And your point about the IEP students is correct, that the state has asked us, and actually legal counsel advises us that students with IEPs should be prioritized for 5 days, as long as it's safe, 5 in-person learning days. So we would have to be thoughtful about our special population to ensure that. Now, with that, we also want to be honest with parents. So if we have, for example, if we are in a full DL model, let's say, there would be, and then only minimal students were coming to school, we want to make sure parents know, what does that classroom look like? How many students are in person, so that we have, and actually our principals have been doing that work since the governor mentioned sort of that state pause, to think about which families need which options and because every child is different, right? That's the uniqueness of our profession. That's why all of us got into this work, so we could be and prioritize the needs. So it wouldn't be, I don't think anyone here, even at the school, I don't want to speak for anyone, would say, yes, it's an all or nothing kind of thing. I think we have to recognize that there's populations and there's learners that we would have to prioritize based on needs. Does that answer your questions, Danielle? Oh, you're muted.
Yes, I think mainly, yeah, that was one of my concerns. And I just want to say thank you to the staff and teachers too that have been going through this, because I know how hard it is on all of us parents being in the back lines. And I know that you guys all love your students. So I just thank you for loving our kids too.
Thank you. Craig Luzon.
Chair, I'll wait for all the parents to go. I just don't have a blue hand to click on.
Because you're a co-host.
Yes, so evidently. So if you could just wait to the end and then you can call me.
Will do. Thank you. Ashley Marsh.
Hello, everyone. So I'm coming to you as a staff member and a parent, and I have a little list here. I work at the integrated preschool at Hope Valley. And so I am advocating for a few things tonight. The first thing I want to say is I have to advocate, obviously, for my fellow teachers. So a lot of the teachers have always had us as, I'm a support staff member, and we would spend time in between classes, prepping for the teachers, helping them prepare for distant learning, or everything prior to distant learning, I should say. We put in all of our best efforts to help them with their planning. Now, every moment that I have and many of my fellow ESP people have, our moments are, for instance, each one of us has to go down and do a lunch to cover because the kids are eating in the lunchrooms. At the end of the day, I'm outside for 40 minutes straight doing parent pickup. And we're all happy to do all these things. And I'm 100% for having the children in school. I have 4 kids in the district, middle school and high school now, and they're actually like rock stars at kind of, oh, we're doing distant learning today. Uh-oh, we might be a close contact. Now we're going to stay home, and we're just making it work. And we're kind of, just trying to stay positive. But I'm just noticing that the teachers are getting super stressed. And not only are the teachers stressed about distant learning and stressed about their in-person children and making sure they can balance both, but they're also really afraid of getting sick. So I think their social and emotional is super important. So that's all I have to say about my teachers. But the next thing I want to say is because I'm in special ed preschool, I do worry that if we do go to distant learning on the Monday, we have to keep in mind that a lot of the special ed students don't come on a Friday. So they would be having Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off, which means that's like a huge lapse of time for them to be going back to school. And usually Mondays are their hardest transition day because it's something different. So, I mean, I would love to see at least the special ed kids still in school 5 days, or most of them 4 days. I just, as a staff member, I think it's better for them. So I don't know. I just wanted to say that just to advocate, because some of the parents on here are my students' parents, and I love them, their families, and as a staff member, I want to be there for them. So I just wanted to put that on the table, that I think it would be definitely to prioritize them is important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Brooke Bishop.
Good evening. Thanks everyone for the time, and to echo a lot of what the other parents have said, sincere appreciation and gratitude to the entire district. We obviously have been exemplar, as Superintendent Picard shared, and I've been really impressed by the teamwork and collaboration, and especially the communication. I have a daughter in Richmond Elementary, in the special education class room there, and similar to what other people have shared, you know, I think looking at the numbers, you know, that were provided, and what I do for a living, I would recommend potentially before a decision is made that we look at how many teachers and classrooms are impacted by distance learning students. So are those numbers 5 teachers? Are they 10 teachers? Does everyone have a little bit, where it would have to take effect for all teachers? Is there a hybrid we could look at where people who are doing that co-teaching get that break? In the special education classroom, I know all of those students are coming every day, and kudos to Ashley who went before me. My kids know her from pre-K, and I think she makes some valid points on both the staff and students sides. I would be concerned personally for my daughter due to the volume of therapy she needs and support, which is amazing from several people on this call, that switching to the 4 days would cause regressions for her. We saw that when we were completely distance learning, but I'm also aware enough that, you know, we want everybody to be safe and recognize that everybody has to do their part. So I think if there's consideration on, one, the volume of teachers that are impacted based on data, and 2, if there were some exceptions that could be made for special ed, so kind of a hybrid of what was sent out, it might work for all benefits. So thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Lauren Casiola.
Hi, I'm actually a parent of a student. He actually goes to Kingston Hill Academy, but I'm also a teacher. My background is I'm going to be on town council in Richmond. So, and I'm also a support staff at a out-of-place school. So my classroom was affected by a close contact. I was quarantined for 4 days until I waited for my test results to come back. I also have a mother who has very severe life-threatening conditions. I had to quarantine from her. So I'm speaking from a parent and also a staff member, and as someone who has a family. My son had to distance learn. I mean, that is extremely hard for him, but I did it to protect the families of the other, my son's school. It took me 4 days to get my test results back. And then when I went to go for my other test, it took me at least almost 2 hours in a line to get another test just to make sure. I think that everyone's doing an amazing job. Even support staff, teachers, administration is doing a fantastic job in trying to keep this. But I wonder how much stress this would be on, let's say, a child that has a teacher who is in the school, they test positive and they end up getting very sick. It's a very big stress, and I think it's a stress on the kids too. But I want to say as well that Ashley Marsh, who said she's a support staff, she probably handled it a good way, saying, everything's going to be okay. We just have to quarantine. But I wonder how this is going to affect our kids if, God forbid, something happens. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Crystal Wild.
Hi, thank you for your time. I have a few opinions and questions, if I may. I have a freshman in high school this year. I had a senior that graduated last year, so I've seen both sides of it. My freshman has asthma. He's been out of school for the past 3 weeks just from a simple cold, being on rounds of antibiotics and steroids for his asthma. I'm grateful that he was able to slip effortlessly into distance learning to be able to work while he was home and not fall behind, because he's also ADHD as well. So I personally walk that line as a parent. Is it better for him educationally? Clearly, to be in person for his ADHD. But then I run that same exact risk of his health, him being at risk, and the other men in my home who also are high risk from their asthma. I look back and I see these teachers and they're overworked, overstressed right now. And I wonder if the simple solution would be to, instead of having to make them teach both ways and it be a change from day to day, whether how many kids are distance and how many they have in class at that moment. If we do a partial hybrid learning where it's a set schedule every day, so those teachers aren't, and administration and everybody are not wondering what they're going to have to deal with every single day, because we all know it's different right now. Every day is different. So is it possible that it's a better, easier solution to maybe instead of having 2 days in school, it's 3 days in school, but it's set days for everyone, so everyone knows what to expect, can have the time to plan, so they're not fumbling each morning as to what has to be dealt with and put out those fires that day. I feel like we're bypassing that whole situation and just we'll take it as we go, take it as we go, take it as we go. The other side of that is a separate question is, I'm wondering as a parent, as these numbers are rising, and I'm so grateful our numbers in the area are low, but I feel like it's only a matter of time, especially with our college kids coming home in the holidays. It's going to happen, unfortunately. And I wonder why, if we're concerned for our children's health, when we if we decide to pull for distance learning, why are we now committed to 2 full semesters? And is there a way that we don't have to commit for so long? Maybe we can take it 3-4 weeks at a time and see how it goes. If we know things are changing on a daily basis, why are we having to commit for 2 full semesters? Things change. I was wondering if you guys have any thoughts on that.
So yes, I mentioned earlier that because we had to, the issue with the Q2 and Q3 registration is it's the spacing. It's needing to know, we know it's going to be still winter time, and we recognize that it's not easy to make sure we have the space. So we have to be mindful that we do. However, because Q2 started Monday and those seats have already been assigned and everyone selected their option, and the press conference from the governor, as we all know, was Thursday regarding that state pause. In my messaging last week, any family, elementary through high school, who wants to pause and go to DL for just a short period of time can do that now and not lose their in-person seat.
Crystal, did that address your question? I lost the place there. Okay. And then I have Michaela Champlin.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. I have two children at Hope Valley, one in the pre-K program and one kindergarten. And I have been so happy with the way everything's been going. They're doing such a fantastic job, and the morale from what the teachers are presenting to the parents is fantastic. And I know that they're probably putting on a brave face some days. And I can really appreciate the position that they're in. I am no longer a teacher, but was a teacher. So I get it just on a regular, normal teaching schedule that it's really hard, so that I can't even imagine what they're doing. My concern is going from 5 days to 4, seeing the workload that is coming on the distance learning days. While it's not a live day, sometimes my concern is that the work doesn't always fulfill the same thing that a full day would do. And obviously it won't, because you're not getting the instruction, but from a kindergarten perspective, because you've got such a range of abilities as a newly kindergarten student, you've got your lower and your higher achieving children. And I think that sometimes the workload gets lost and it starts to feel like you're not getting 180 days of school, because you're losing, it kind of feels like you're losing a day in school, especially if you have chosen to do full-time in-person learning, which we have chosen to do. So one of the things that I was kind of going on in my head, because I've been hearing some people talk about hybrid, you know, knowing a lot of families that are in Connecticut, I have a lot of friends in Connecticut, and they are on a hybrid model, most of the schools. And the teachers it's very hard for them, from what my teacher friends are saying. So while I can appreciate the fear that people have and the concerns that people have, I wonder that if the teachers are feeling overwhelmed, that the potential to maybe have specific teachers for distance learning separate from classroom teachers might be something to think about. If you've got teachers that are concerned and you've got a large grade number, like a large number per grade level, it could possibly benefit everybody. It takes the students out of the classroom that are, you know, if you've got 5 distance learners in your class, now there's maybe 20 kindergarten distance learners. That's a class. You know, you could have somebody teaching distance that class, and it would alleviate the need for the teachers to have extra prep time. Because I can really appreciate where they're coming from, but I definitely see the need for them to be in school. And my opinion is that the back and forth makes it really challenging. And that when I talk to my friends who are on these hybrid in-out things, it's never consistent. It doesn't feel consistent. And maybe one day would be better, you know, the 4 days versus these like 3 in, 2 out days. But I'm just concerned that the consistency gets lost. The workload, the way that your work day goes at school gets lost. I worry about the parents that have to work. I'm not one of those parents, but I know a lot of people that are, and I worry about parents that have to work that are choosing in person. So I just wanted to express, you know, my concerns, and I can really appreciate where everybody's coming from, but I just wanted to be able to say that, you know, I'm really in favor of them staying in school and either pulling your children if you feel the need to, or trying to work something out so the teachers can get a little bit of a break without having to be not in school. So I don't know if that is something that had been considered, but.
Thank you. Gina, you're muted.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Okay, we've actually have considered it. The concern around just having one teacher having only DL is that's never the case. We knew with the reopening that people were not sure what to do. we knew we would have families contact us. And we also knew that if by providing one instructor for DL, we would increase the number of in-person learners in the classroom too. So that means class size would have risen. And an example would have been, we would have had 0 kindergartners, let's say in Hope Valley, where we had a least number of distance learners in Hope Valley, where, we have some teachers that have no distance learners, like you said. We have some who have 2, we have some who have 3. I think our largest class may have 8 or 9, but then you bring in a quarantine, a close contact from a family, and then they shift. I don't feel well. So who takes the child that doesn't feel well? And it becomes, I want to tell you, it's another challenge. I wish there was an easy way. I've spoken with other districts. I know, to Lisa's Macroso's point earlier, there's these virtual academies, but you're in essence giving up your children for, this other kind of instructor that's not just district related. The staffing needs. I wish it was as easy as saying, yes, we could do it, and then we would fix this distance learning versus in-person learning, but it's such a flux every day because we're asking you to stay home if you have a sore throat. We're asking you to stay home if you have a headache. So in essence, you could always be, moving a piece here and there. But it's a great point. And I do, and I think, you're echoing what, if elementary school families, I've heard from many of our families who couldn't as well be on here today. Some who wanted DL and are happy that we still have that option. And some who, like you, said, I don't know what will happen if we don't have 5 days in learning. My child's already struggling on the state PD day. So I
yeah, and my specific child is not struggling. He happens to tend to be on the higher end of the learning spectrum. So in reality, it's not really a concern because he's kind of above average, but I worry that it's just kind of, while there's plenty of things that are getting sent home and it's appropriate, it's certainly not the same as being in school, and it's not even the same as a live distance learning day, which when we were back in March, we were getting live distance learning days, which I know they were rolling through because it was new and every week it got a little bit different and better because the teachers were figuring it out. But when you have a non-live distance learning day, it definitely changes the dynamic of what the work is, because now it's worksheets or it's reading, which are all appropriate and age appropriate and ability appropriate. But for someone like my child, he can breeze through all of that work in 45 minutes because he likes worksheets and he's good at it and he knows what he's doing and it's done. And I just worry that that's fine once a month for a PD day, but I worry about that becoming a regular occurrence for the rest of the year.
I understand. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I have Lisa Macruso.
Well, you know what? I know Craig was wanting to speak to. Chair, I just want to say after these next 2 hands, I would like to proceed with the motion so we can kind of narrow this down. I could do it now, but I want to hear Vin and Craig first. But if you could just call on me fourth, I'd appreciate that.
Understood. Thank you. Vin Lefkowitz.
Hello. So I feel like there are times that I'm in the movie Groundhog Day because I've been saying a lot of what I'm about to say for, the past few months. While I think I don't know that I could probably get total agreement on what plan is the best based on all the educators. I'm learning that even statewide that teachers can't agree. But the one thing that I can say with 100% certainty since the beginning of this whole craziness is that teachers are totally stressed to the max. They need time. And while I hear and I respect all the opinions that have gone on before, this is a totally new environment for every single teacher, whether you're in 25 years or 25 days. Coming up with different types of lessons, being able to kind of work with, distance and in person at the same time. It's not something that you can just figure out in a 90-minute PD session. It is something that we really have to I need to be able to work with my colleagues. I need time to sit and kind of come up with strategies that are going to benefit the students as opposed to, you know, kind of going through the motions. The fears that I have are kind of twofold. The next 3.5 weeks or so between Thanksgiving and Christmas, extremely paranoid just because of, you know, the fact that there's going to be a ton of travel. Families going to want to get together, which they should. We're getting into the cold and flu season. And the one thing I don't necessarily want, and I don't want to speak for all the members, but for me, I don't want to get to a situation where we just have to come to a screeching halt and go from wherever we're at to full distance learning, because I don't know that that benefits everyone. I think we really have to look at the long game. I think we have to look at these next 3 weeks. And I also think that we need to look at what we're going to do going forward. But I cannot stress enough the fact that the teachers need time. There are no canned lessons that we can go to. There are no super experts that we can go to come up with these types of lesson plans and being able to teach this way. So what I've been trying to do since all of this is just utilize common sense. Is it the most ideal setting for students? No. I have a senior. She's currently in person, and I can definitely tell you that while she's still getting good instruction, it's not the type of instruction that I think we're used to at Charahoe. And it's no fault of the staff. It's no fault of administration. It's the lousy situation that we're in. And I think as Charahoe is continually the beacon who always tries to lead forward, I think this is a golden opportunity for the district to once again show the state how things should really be done. Because it's frustrating for me looking at state leadership to see them continually moving the goalposts and you know, making changes when it benefits them. I know that we have a lot of low cases in our district, but just want to remind the school committee that we also have to look at the sending districts percentages, because we do get a lot of kids from outside districts. So again, I would just, if I have to beg, I'll beg, but we need this time. We need to be able to work with one another for our own mental health, to kind of get through the rest of this year. If it's just foot on the gas nonstop for the rest of the year, I fear it could get ugly. I know the teachers will do their jobs, but it could get ugly.
Thanks, man. We have Jill Fontenot.
Hi, thank you. I apologize. My husband is drilling in the basement, so if you can't hear me, that's why. Vincent, everything you just said was spot on. Like, I couldn't have said it better. I come to you as a parent of 2 kids in Charlestown Elementary. I'm also a building substitute there, so I'm there every day, seeing the Herculean efforts that the teachers are going through every day. It's amazing. They're doing an amazing job. As far as the 4-day thing, like, I completely defer to the teachers, and I'd love to hear, you know, from more teachers on their thoughts on that, because I took the survey as a parent, but I was like, hey, whatever the teachers need, I'm in support of. My concern currently is this holiday pause that the state is going through and what our district is responding with. Because we've heard over and over in this meeting, one of the great things about this model that we're currently doing is the ease of switching from DL to in-person. And, you know, if a child or a staff member or a parent or anyone is getting tested, then the child can move to DL and then come back. And that is true. However, being in the building, I have to say that it's not as easy as just, I mean, we make it sound really easy, and we've set up the model so that it is possible, but that doesn't mean it's easy. It's not easy on the staff to switch back and forth, and it's not easy on the students to switch back and forth. My own kids have had to do it, and it's disruptive. Like, it's disruptive to the class, the kids that are still in there, you know, suddenly other kids aren't there. It's disruptive to the teachers. And I worry about the holidays, and the amount of disruption is just going to rise. I think it's wonderful that we have the option to pause our own children. Like, I could choose to pause my kids through the holiday. That's great, but the staff doesn't have that option. And, you know, I think that's a consideration. We're saying, well, the kids can pause. Well, the staff doesn't, like, they're still gonna have to go. And I don't necessarily think that's fair. I also, you know, Rhode Island is over 5% positivity rate right now. And we're saying, you know, if students go out of state, they have to quarantine for 14 days. But as Vincent said, people are going to be seeing their families even within Rhode Island in the coming weeks. And we're over 5% in Rhode Island, but we're not having kids quarantine every time they see anybody outside their household. And I don't really see where the risk is being mitigated in an appropriate way, I guess, over the coming holidays. I'm nervous.
Thank you. Okay, I think that this is time. One thing I want to say, Craig, do you want to go first, or you want to go after Lisa makes her motion?
No, I'll go before Lisa, because she wants to make her motion. I'm on board with her motion. But after listening to everybody, and yes, Vincent, I've heard you every single time, and I got empathy for what you've been preaching. I heard Robin in the beginning, and you know, she brought up a valid point. We're a very rural area, but then again, the Dakotas are a very rural area in this country, and they're one of the hottest regions with the pandemic. I tend to agree that a timeout could be a good idea. I'm really concerned. I like everybody else. We have a life to live, and we shopped and the past 6 months, and I saw a lot of this state didn't take this serious. And I'm concerned next week, but I'm more concerned getting into the Christmas season. People are going to be shopping. Not everybody's going to shop online. I think a timeout would be a very good idea. I just want to throw that out there. Whether we shut down for a certain period of time, just distance learning only, you know, we're going to be buttoning up the hatches pretty soon, and our school's going to become little greenhouses. And I know the HEPA filters do their job, but they're even limited too. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, Lisa Macruso.
So we still have 128 people on the call, and this has been wonderful. There will be 128 variations of what would be the best plan. So my motion is really calling on my colleagues in the school committee to do our work, dig deep as leaders, as elected officials, and try to come to some consensus that can help guide what needs to happen. Because there will be, right, within my own family, there's 4 versions of what we should do. So this motion is based on the research that I did, the voices that I heard from the community, from our teachers and admin, from our teachers, admin, and nursing staff. And I did change some of the wording in this motion based on Ashley and Danielle's input. So before I read it, I want you to note that I am no longer specifying a day. That's going to be left to the implementation of the motion. And I also want you to pay particular attention to the phrase "in collaboration with building administrators." And that, I think, is what's going to account for some flexibility around how to best program for our students with special needs. And so thank you for that input. I did make some notes to my motion as a result of it. So, and Donna, I have this, I can send it to you. I make a motion to direct the superintendent in collaboration with building administrators to initiate a weekly asynchronous distance learning day for the purpose of dual modality lesson development, educator collaboration, and student-family conferencing.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Lisa, seconded by Craig. This is now open for discussion. George Abbott and then Donna Chambers.
Yes, I'd like to receive some input from the superintendent as to her opinion on going to a 4-day model or Lisa's plan.
So I think you heard my understanding for the 4-day is really, the teachers, the pause to be able to really be thoughtful about the duality of the learning. I think the flexibility, I appreciate the flexibility in the motion, because I think you heard, for example, pre-K doesn't attend on Friday. So it provides its own challenges. So working with the admins to really think about what does that look like, the flexibility with our special education population that may need to go 5 days, that it's going to be important that it's, so we don't have the have and the have nots, but it does provide challenges within the staff, because that means certain staff will be doing one thing and others will not. So I just want to make that sure that I'm understanding that. John?
Mr. Chairman, I too have questions like the superintendent does. I do not understand, based on the motion, whether the 5th day is an instructional day or not an instructional day. Legally, the Charahoe Regional School District, like all public schools in Rhode Island, is required to have a minimum number of minutes of instruction per week. I'm certainly not questioning it as a work week. I'm questioning it as an instructional week. Second of all, I am very concerned about a 1-day off a week for children with disabilities. I think that it exposes the district, from a legal perspective, it exposes the district to considerable liability from parents whose children need the continuity of services that was described by some of the parents on this call. I will point out to the school committee the argument that parents will make at hearings, and that is, my child is only 4 years old once. My child needs to develop skills of a 4-year-old. And if school is not in session on that day, my child is not developing those skills. So I think that there needs to be some clarification for the school, for the administration, as to whether the 5th day is or is not an instructional day. And second of all, whether services will be offered to all children with disabilities on that 5th day.
Yes, happy to clarify. The vocabulary I used in the motion was an asynchronous distance learning day. And so that might be college phraseology that didn't translate, John. So in my world, a distance learning day is a school day. And asynchronous just means that, as one parent described, it's not the teacher having engaged camera on active lessons, that there could be supplemental materials, review, research, tutorials, all sorts of digital education. And so that's why I use that word asynchronous distance learning.
The problem is that does not mesh with this Department of Education's regulations with regard to instructional time. Okay. So the question is not so much what you're describing with it and what is appropriate at the University of Rhode Island, but whether it qualifies as instructional time. That's the first point I'm raising. The second concern, again, I have with your motion from a legal perspective is with regard to the rights and the Charahoe Regional School District's responsibilities to children with disabilities.
Okay, so asynchronous, I believe what I'm hearing you say is the word that is making this deviate from a K through 12 to any other setting. So distance learning day should remain in the motion. Donna, I would strike the word asynchronous. I don't know if I need a second to that. I make an amendment to strike the word asynchronous from the motion.
We have a second to the amendment. Seconded by David Stahl. Thank you.
Okay, so that clarifies that.
Well, I want to make sure that I understand that it is, because I'm the person who's going to have to defend this if parents complain. And I'm going to have to defend whether the expectation is that we will be delivering instruction on those days. That's what I'm going to have to defend if a parent files a complaint at RIDE. Just like I'm going to have to defend the district if a special education student is supposed to get 15 hours a week of remedial reading, but since we don't have class on Fridays, that child only is getting 12 hours a week.
Thank you. We're going to vote on the amendment. We're going to take that one up. So we have a motion and a second to amend the motion by Lisa, which is to remove asynchronous. Any discussion from the committee on this? Lisa? No, I'm sorry. I thought I saw your hand pop up. All right. Bill Day? Can't hear you, sir.
So removing asynchronous, but what is the verbiage going forward? That's what I'm not quite clear on.
Reread that.
I think I need a whole new motion, not a whole new motion, but certainly that sentence needs to be clarified for me.
Yeah, thank you. So asynchronous was actually just an extra adjective. It was just, it's extra. So the way it would read now, Bill, is I make a motion to direct the superintendent in collaboration with building administrators to initiate a weekly distance learning day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And my question would be, is Mr. Anderson comfortable with that?
As long as two things. One, that the distance learning day is a fully instructional day, number one, and that children are being instructed. And then number two is that there are arrangements made for children with disabilities to receive their services in person. You can't do physical therapy over a video link. You can't do speech, for a lot of kids, you can't do speech therapy over a video link. And those kids need to have those services delivered in person.
Any further questions?
Mr. Chairman, I saw Greg McKenzie's hand, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if you did, but just wanted to.
Okay.
I just want to say I really support the potential of the collaboration. I've been using the word sustainability and talking with my faculty and staff all year. The concern that John brought up is one that I just kind of tried to confront when we were thinking about prioritizing our special needs populations and bringing them into the building. But that brings with it all kinds of challenges in terms of our responsibilities to the teachers. So teachers need to have a time off. There's teachers who teach electives who have to service children in times when the primary teachers, if we're bringing in students with IEPs, that would essentially bring just about every single one of our teachers back in the building and have them be responsible for being in front of kids. And I haven't personally figured out how to make that work. So I'm not here to suggest how to make an amendment or put a phrase together, but I think that's something that we need to work on to think about how we can make this idea, which has a ton of merit for multiple reasons. I can tell you our teachers identified 100 out of our 300 distance learners who are at risk because of different levels of disconnect from our school community. And I see part of that day, that's family conferencing time, as a chance to reconnect and to engage and provide interventions for our committed distance learners. But the personnel piece is something that I don't feel like I have And I'm not the only mind who would have to kind of wrap itself around how to make that work and fit into the equity issues for our faculty and staff and have it and transportation. And it's a pretty long list. So those are just my.
We're just supposed to vote on the asynchronous part. I don't want this motion getting thrown out because we violated the OMA.
Right, yeah, so I
The
that's
wording.
where I want to pull it back.
We can get back to it.
Right. So with respect to this, George, I see your hand up. Is this on the amendment or on the main motion?
I have a question for the attorney.
Go for it.
John, would this cause any problems with our contracts?
Oh, every piece of this would have to be negotiated with the union. It addresses the terms and conditions of employment. And changing the terms and conditions of employment has to be negotiated. So the answer is, it would be up to the union to approach the union and sit down with the union and design this with the union.
So this could create like a past practice issue or issues?
Well, we would have to negotiate what this would look like with the union.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. So folks, unless this is a comment on the asynchronous removal, I want to close discussion, and I'm going to move this to the committee for vote. Those in favor of the amendment, aye.
Can you
Two, three.
repeat the amendment, please?
Sorry, Craig, but you broke up. What was that?
Can you repeat the amendment, please, before I vote?
The amendment is to remove the word asynchronous from Lisa's motion. All right. Those in favor of removing it. All right. I see Bill, Lisa, Craig, David, Linda McAllister, Donna Chambers, Catherine Giusti, Sheila Grover. Thank you all. Motion passes. Those opposed? Those abstaining? All right. Thank you, George. So George abstained. Okay. So the amendment has passed. This brings us back to the main motion itself. You've heard input from a number of folks. George, our attorney. I do have a number of folks who've had their hands up. I'm going to go first with Craig Luzon and then David Stahl. And Donna, you had your hand up a while back. Do you still have a comment? Okay.
I do.
Okay, then actually you were first, so please go first, and then Craig Luzon, and then David Stahl.
This is so confused. It's such a difficult task here. What I heard was, and I'm questioning Lisa's motion, that is one day enough going to be, that's a step in the right direction. But I also heard people very nervous about continuing the regular 4 or 5 days in school through the holiday periods. My question is, number one, this is probably to Gina, is there any school district who's actually pausing through, like the colleges are, from Thanksgiving through Christmas, so that the kids are not in school and exposing each other?
I don't know about every district. I know I've spoken with the South County superintendents, and the course of action, although 2 of them have meetings tonight as well, has been to move forward with the plans that have been in place since the beginning. So no one that I'm aware of in our district, in our counties.
Okay, thank you. In the meantime, Vince, I've been listening to you too, and I agree with you that there's major concerns about the health risks while in school. And if people are going to travel through the holidays, and I hope to God they're not, and I hope they're not gathering through the holidays, as many of the experts are saying, don't do it. Vince, what would you be satisfied with, or what would your membership be satisfied with if would they be satisfied with one day, or would they be better, feeling better about just pausing through the whole holiday period? Vince?
Yeah.
And by pausing, excuse me 1 second, let me clarify that. By pausing, I mean going back to where we were in March, where the kids were not in school. We were not having in-person learning. We were continuing with distance learning. Yes.
As I said during my comments tonight, I think you have to look at, you have to look at the immediate future and the long term. I think the immediate future, I don't know. I don't want to speculate as far as what everybody would think. I think if I said one way or another, I would probably upset, the other members who didn't agree with me. I mean, I've said it since August. We need to use common sense. So if there's a way to utilize common sense and keep everybody safe, then I say do that for the short term. But as for the long term, I definitely, I'm going to echo again that we need the time. And, I have the utmost respect for Mr. Anderson, but the one thing I will say is that we have students who are distance learning right now. And we're not, I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that there are any parents who chose to do DL that are saying, I need to have my physical therapy in person. So, I mean, I understand what he's trying to say, but I also think that we really need to look at this from all aspects. And, I don't know that this is something that needs to open up an entire contract. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I don't think it's going to be the next day I'm going to be, overwhelming the committee with a bunch of requests. I think what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get this district to maintain as much in-person learning as possible. I don't want to get to a shutdown. I don't want to get to a point where either A, we have cases that are overwhelming the district, but I also B, and I think this is something the committee really needs to look at, I don't want it to be a shutdown because you don't have enough staff. And maybe it's staff because they have an illness, or maybe it's staff because they're just mentally overwhelmed. So I'm trying to play the long game as much as I possibly can, because I don't know that anybody wants to go back to what we had in March, because while we were successful, I don't think it's what we're capable of. So I hope that answers your question.
So one follow-up, is one day enough to feel comfortable with the safety and the time?
I think the fact that this committee is looking at it from, looking at it through the lens of a teacher and realizing that, okay, this is new to everybody. I think one day is a step in the right direction. I think if we ask for more, I don't know. I don't know if that's a benefit for the kids. I mean, I'm really trying to walk a tightrope here.
I know.
And I will say that, again, I've been saying this since the beginning. There are, all the members that I represent, this has been my most trying year, just because I've had to hear the stories of so many incredible members sit there and basically say to me that they are kind of like on their last leg trying to get through the next week or the next day. So if there's a way that we can get a day where they can have the ability to take a breath, but yet still, do what they need to do to help kids, I'm all for it. I honestly think that right now, if we continue to go in this direction where it's full steam ahead, full gas, foot on the pedal, I don't want to be coming back in a month or 2 months to say, I said this back in November. I really just want the committee to just look at it with the utmost common sense. So hopefully that answers
that. Yeah. Anyway, all right.
All right, thank you. So I've got Craig Luzon, David Stahl, and then I do see a number of hands that have popped up, which are Paige Letty, Betsy Alvarez.
And Linda McAllister has her hand up as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's start with Craig, David, and then Linda McAllister, and then we'll get to the rest.
So from what I understand, we've kind of deviated from the original premise. The original premise, and correct me if I'm wrong, was to have a sort of hybrid 1 day a week where there's some distance learning, some parent-teacher communication, some worksheets going home, some time for teachers to recharge, correct?
Correct.
And now it's morphed into a day of distance learning.
Correct.
So let me correct that. That is the same. So the only morphing, Donna was asking Vin to explore, like, is this enough? That was the conversation, but the motion hasn't changed. So the motion remains, it is a distance learning day, and that the purpose of that to help address actually what I thought I pre-addressed Mr. Anderson's concern, so that it's clearly not a day off, is that with that time, teachers will work on dual modality lesson development, collaboration with other administrators and educators, and being able to engage DL students, families, and conferences. So it's a pretty engaging day, but it is done from a DL format. So nothing's changed.
So therefore, they would still be doing distance teaching for the same time frame for the day. So what are we accomplishing here? So I have a question for John. Are you there, John?
I'm here.
I know it's proper protocol. I don't know if it's officially with Robert's rules, but if you make a motion or second the motion, you should be voting in favor of the motion, correct?
No, you don't. You don't have to. You can make a motion and second it solely for the purpose of discussion.
Okay. My question has been answered. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. David Stahl.
All right, so I love when Vin says he's walking the tightrope, and then he says, if we all just do what common sense says. There's a lot of people with a good amount of common sense here that are having a hard time coming to the same conclusions because it's very complex. So people still have different perspectives. So what I was supportive of the idea and the sentiment of this for the reason that we all were, I think, which was to make sure that we were giving teachers a little bit of a breather and a break to make these adjustments and to work on their lesson planning and to avoid burnout and all that sort of thing. But what we're finding out in the conversation, and I appreciate Craig Mackenzie, I appreciate your feedback on this, because there's not really a great way to do that. And if you're still going to bring in the students that have the IEPs or the other needs, and then you're going to end up having a whole bunch of the staff in the building, it's just not going to work the same way. It's not going to accomplish what we wanted. As Craig said, what are we accomplishing? Well, it's not going to accomplish what I was envisioning in seconding that motion. And John Anderson's bringing us the obligations, the obligations that we have and legally that we have and the things that we're bound to and that we're bound to instruction time. So that doesn't make sense. Every expert that we ask, everybody who we ask for their opinion, Dr. Manlove, a great physician, and I respect very much, she says, well, the better and healthier choice is to be in schools. Then other people are saying, but we'd rather not be in schools. And Vin's trying to speak for the teachers, but he's having to speak carefully because he knows that they're divided. So all of this tells me I can't vote for the motion to do 1 day of distant learning, but I'm still not done trying to get over the idea here or the principle. So what I'm asking, or what I'm going to pitch to you, I'm going to vote no for this, but what I'm going to ask you to think about as an alternative, and I'd like to hear maybe from the administrators on this, is there a way we can accomplish this by rotating substitute teachers so that every teacher in every building has an opportunity, say once every 2 weeks, to have a day where they're doing planning, all the things that Lisa was talking about, special lesson planning, work, that sort of thing, and you put a sub in for that teacher once every 2 weeks to just give them a chance to breathe, a full school day where they can prepare and work and do all those other things and accomplish what we wanted to accomplish and really do it. Whether that teacher works remotely that day or in the building, doesn't matter, whatever's easier for them. But can we come up with a plan that rotates subs in to give every teacher in every building? And I know some of you are going to say it's so hard to get subs already. I know that. But is there a way that we can rotate so that every teacher gets an opportunity every 2 weeks to have one day where they accomplish this personally? And we figure out that, and we change nothing else about when the students are in the building and the schedule. Is that doable?
Thanks, David. Gina?
So I think one of the proposals we had early on in October, which Vin, I'll apologize ahead of time because I know you didn't love the idea, but I think it may be a compromise just based on, you know, the needs of both our teachers, our faculty, our staff, and our students, was an early release time, because that truly would be a time where we would meet the instructional minutes of the day. We would release for the purpose of the planning for teachers to collaborate, and we could build those in bi-weekly, monthly, weekly, depending on the preference. But it truly then would allow us to do both, right? It would allow us to bring students to school, have them in person doing their instructional day, and then release at a time midday prior lunch. We could do grab and go even to get more time for teachers. And that would provide us the opportunity to focus on the teacher planning. And I know, Vin, you didn't love my idea back in October, and you see you shaking your head, but that was one of the options we thought may have provided some support. And
Thanks, Shannon.
a compromise.
Thank you. Linda McAllister.
I'll be quick on this. Craig, David, and Gina just hit on all the points that I was going to ask about. In the beginning, I was asked or looking for, and I think we all were looking for, more time for teachers, more planning time. I know that distance learning is not time off. When you're a distant learning teacher, you are on 100% of the time. So it wouldn't be time for teachers to plan. So in this particular vote, I would have, because it doesn't answer the questions that I was concerned about, I would have to vote no on this one. But I do think there are ways to do this. It just has to be done differently, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa.
So I want to encourage everybody. Of course, I'm going to vote for my own motion, right? But this is great. We're fine. We're doing the hard work, right? So we're all. I know we're in a good place. For those of you that haven't maybe made a motion before, just want to tell you, you can make amendments, right? We have everyone together. I would be really disappointed if we just walked away from this meeting and made no progress. So keep in mind, anyone can amend my motion. Right, and any one of you can spend the days and go out and do the research or make some phone calls and then come in with a new motion and do the same thing I'm doing, but to have a solution, to have something on the table. So I just want to bring that kind of to everyone's mind. Change it up, see if it passes, make an amendment, you make this the political process, and maybe we can have our teachers and families leave with something today. And if not, we'll be back in 2 weeks and maybe a school committee member will have an idea and put it through in a motion, not a discussion, and we'll be here again. And that's cool, that's good. But I just want to remind all of you, change it up. If you don't just say no, say, how about instead make the motion? I'll support it.
Thanks, Lisa. Bill Day.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that Mr. Anderson, who has represented the school district for many years and kept us on the right side of the law on just about every case that I'm aware of, that he needs to be one of the people involved in any kind of problems that we decide to solve here. So I'm hoping that if he sees something again that he thinks maybe leading us into a situation where the state will turn around and say, well, you didn't do it right, so we're going to punish you by withholding Title IX money or this kind of money. This is what the state does to school districts that they want to punish. They withhold funding. So I think that is also a consideration that we need to keep in mind here, that John Anderson needs to be very deeply involved in anything that we do here, regardless of what motions are made. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Gina, could you reiterate for us? So one of the major things that I've heard this evening and has been articulated is the stress that our faculty are under. And I know that Lisa's, a big portion of our intent with the motion was specifically to address that component of it. I don't support the motion because I don't think that substituting a distance learning day accomplishes that goal. So specifically with respect to the stress that our faculty are under, what you've talked about, the employee assistance program, what additional measures have you and the staff talked about so that we don't get burnout, and hopefully that's not too late, or we get to, as Vinny alluded to, with respect to, we're short-staffed because just the staff are just too stressed with the circumstances. So, with respect to that, what do we have that we can do that addresses that?
That's a great question. And I think, and that's like the $1 million question, right? And I think we're not the only state or the district having that conversation, which is why the superintendent, all of us, the assistant superintendents, myself, Jane, along with the state, met today to talk about that stress, anxiety, fear with staff members, teachers, that coursework that that RIDE will be launching for all educators across the state next week. Because that's our ask, that we all recognize that that's a real thing, and we're all worried about sustainability. Vin is absolutely right. Having enough staff to open a building, who knows how many close contacts or a quarantine or just a PTO day may put a school at a place where they couldn't staff. That's a real thing, and I think that's where we are. I mean, Kristen Merritt and I have plans to have a conversation on Sunday before we return back to school after the holiday to see what that looks like. What I know is the employee assistance program is there. I do think it's hard, even as educators, we tend to be people who work for our kids and we'll do whatever it takes. But we have often educators have a hard time finding it and regulating that stress. And this pandemic brings on just those additional challenges. I mean, imagine, doesn't matter if you've been teaching 30 years or 10 years or 2 years. I think all of us are struggling trying to figure out how to handle those challenges. We've tried with the teaching support, for example, we just, last meeting, we approved the MOA, try to carve out time with our elementary school teachers. The high school has a nice block schedule, which allows our high school teachers to have a minimum of 90-minute unassigned period a day, but they're doing something they've never done before. It's definitely, troublesome for them. So they're definitely dealing with these challenges. And I don't know, the principals definitely are at the helm of that, trying their best every single day, helping them think through. A lot of our teachers that are finding some success, and it's not, I won't say that it means it comes without its challenges, is that really giving up the old and reinventing and really being innovative about how to redesign a lesson in a very different way, where before you had your bag of tricks. No one has the bag of tricks. Everyone is learning. With the sustainability, it's not going to be easy. The time to self-regulate, which is why they presented that coursework, which is I hate using that word because it feels like it's more work. But it really is about, and I know they've done it in Connecticut. They're doing it. I think Rhode Island, the governor, was the second state to get it for free for all our teachers. So it'll provide them with additional supports. But again, it's access. I'm not sure that, and I can double check with Kristen. She has checked in. We had her look at our attendance comparison from this year to last year, and we're very much in line there's, a little bit of an uptick due to a couple of, close contacts or teachers on quarantine. And we have to, we have some teachers on virtual assignment already, so they're categorized that way. But we're not seeing any major changes with staff attendance, but it could. Vin is absolutely right. We don't know. It's the new snowstorm, if you will, the staffing.
Right. Okay, thank you. Sheila Grover.
I want to know, how is this different than a professional development day that we in terms of people, teachers being able to do what they need to do and the kids being able to be schooled without the teachers right there online?
They counted them as part of the state calendar. So the state sort of waived those days, which they have permission to do because they're the state. If we wanted to do that, we would have to petition the state.
Okay, so in other words, it's true, you're looking at having the teachers do distance learning, like be present for these kids online. No, Lisa's telling me no. I'm just confused how this is different than a professional development day.
Yeah, so, and a couple of people on this call had my summary before this meeting, and I'm pretty flexible. I could have rethought this at the time, but so the purpose is the teachers, what I heard, right? I'm not a teacher, I'm not in Terre This is what I was told, that what is needed, and Vin reiterated it pretty clearly, is time to excel, to engage. It's not just about not even burning out. It's having the time to collaborate, having the time to make meaningful lessons for both sets of students. And then the added benefit would be having some time to be able to reach out to those DL students and have some one-on-ones, have some parent conferences, have some time. It's an administrative type day. Now, I was a teacher, and let me tell you, there are days where you have quiet work days. It's a thing. Okay, it doesn't matter that it's 2020. There are days where teachers are like, you know what? It's a quiet work day today, kids. And right, we're gonna work towards something, but it's not gonna be jelly beans and jumping around. So I really feel like this is similar to that. The students, as long as the students have assigned work, right, that they have things to be working towards and things that the teachers have prepared in advance for them to do throughout the day, that does, from what I was told, open up the space for them to breathe, to plan, to collab, because not every Monday or every whatever day it is, every DL student's going to need to check in. Yeah. Sometimes families won't need to check in. That time becomes available to them.
Yeah,
so
I understand that.
It's a quiet work day. It's a virtual quiet work day.
That makes more sense to me. What I would propose is that maybe the reason why we're having so much trouble figuring out how this is going to work is we're trying to do every classroom on this day. Maybe one of the solutions could be that it is a rolling thing, that we do, maybe we do it every 2 weeks and then it's alternating. So we're not trying to, so that way that may take some of the stress off trying to get the special needs folks taken care of and all that stuff, like, so that it's all in the rotation, everybody gets a shot, where you're not trying to do everybody on the same day. I think that's very hard. And maybe something to think about is how we're scheduling this.
Yeah, make an amendment, sure.
I mean, yeah. I don't know if that should be in the figuring out of how to execute it, or if it should be part of the motion itself.
Yeah, thanks, Sheila.
Thank you.
I think the challenge I would like to put to Superintendent Picard is you've heard a lot of concern from this committee on our faculty's health and their continued health. A lot of people have weighed in terms of the educational style that they want to continue with. I think the challenge that I'd like to see some thought put into is how do we address the teachers' health in conjunction with continuing, with our plan as put forth today. I really like David Stahl's comments in that space. Maybe there's something in there. However, with respect to the motion that's active on the floor, I see a lot of people that still want to add a comment and so on. But from a committee standpoint, I also want to be sensitive to those comments if they are going to motivate you to move from your position in that continued debate needed. I still think, and can I see some head nods? Do we continue on that front, or should I move this to vote? Mr. Luzon.
David, your idea is very novel. So in reference to substitutes. So I have a question for Gina.
Yes.
When does the federal funding that boosted the pay for substitutes, when does that end? And because that would be impacting this, because I know we just couldn't afford it on what we previously used to budget and pay substitute teachers.
The reimbursement from RIDE ends December 30th.
That's what I was afraid of. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Giuseppe?
Thank you. For some reason, I don't have a raise my hand button, maybe because I'm a co-host, but
okay.
There's a couple things. The substitute idea, I get it. It sounds like a good idea, but it's going to require teachers to do more work to make plans for a substitute to go in. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a little bit more stressful. And the other thought I had is, here we are going on Thanksgiving break, and all this is what it's doing is giving teachers more stress. When everybody who felt like we were in a good place leaving, and now we're talking about this, and everyone's stressed out, and it's an issue, and we need to be careful because our teachers are losing it. I hate to say it like that, but we're having struggles, and I don't think people are realizing that. As the principal of Hope Valley, it's difficult. So that's all I really wanted to say. But I think something does need to be done, and Vince said it a couple of times. It's common sense. So I think we need to just go back to thinking about what's the best for our staff and students.
David Stoll.
Yeah, Giuseppe, I really appreciate that, and I saw Craig nodding. I'm looking to you guys here, and I'm begging for the kind of feedback you're giving us right at this moment, because again, the idea here is not trying to make it more stressful. So what I want to hear from you really specifically, Giuseppe, if you wouldn't mind following up your comment. I know they call you Joe up there in Hope Valley, but if you wouldn't mind following that up with, tell me then what you would want us to do for the people in your building. That would tell me what that common sense answer is. It just stay the course and just leave it as it is for now? Or would you push like Vin for a pause or a break altogether? Tell me what that common sense thing is, because I can't take it as a given that I know what you mean.
Yeah, no, and that's the $1 million question, Mr. Stahl. But I think I'm leaning towards what Vin's thinking, the 4-day and then giving an asynchronous day for teachers. Not necessarily a distance learning day, because that's, again, requiring a lot of work for teachers, but activities that, yeah, there might be some times of virtual learning, but there will be time for students to work on their own, to do activities, and teachers having some office hours possibly, but using that time to plan.
I just realized what I did wrong. I said distance learning instead of virtual learning. That was it, wasn't it? It just occurred to me when you said virtual learning, Joe, that I used the wrong word. I used distance and it should have been virtual. Ah.
I think there's more than that. And I would advocate, but if you're asking for my opinion, that I want to say that Lisa and Vinny's proposal has merit. There's just some things, logistical things that we have to work out to make it happen. I think, you know, Superintendent Picard even referenced one of them, which is that we would have to petition the state to be allowed to do what we're doing. We're crushing it as a district in terms of how we're delivering instruction. And I want as much in-person instruction as possible. And I want my teachers and my staff to stay as sane as possible as well. So my take on it is that the proposal still has merit. There's some logistics that I think as building administrators, union representatives, teachers, staff, families, we can troubleshoot and work out. And I'm very invested in trying to do that.
Thanks, Greg. Catherine Giusti.
Thank you. So there are districts that are using this model, that they have 1 day of virtual learning. It's asynchronous, and they have 4 in-person days. So we could perhaps talk to those districts and figure out how they got authorization from the state and what they're doing with their special ed population, because that is a major concern. I'm more concerned about that population and making sure that they're getting a robust education. Children who are doing particularly well right now, I think that's a wonderful thing. I think your children can find things to do on an asynchronous day as well. So I think we need to be very mindful of our special ed population. We've heard from those parents that they're worried, and how are we going to best support them? But our teachers need relief. We saw that very clear on that survey, and we saw from some of our students that they're looking for relief too. So I think it's something that we can't just, we're going to leave people some people are going to be unhappy with the decision that we make. Period. They always are. We're not going to have the perfect solution. The perfect solution is kids in school 5 days a week with happy and healthy teachers, but we can't necessarily have that right now. Nothing is normal. And I think we need to really be mindful of the fact that there are districts that are using this model. Let's talk to them, see how they're getting the dispensation from the state. I think we need to be mindful of the special ed population, but I do think we need to listen to our teachers and hear that we do need a pause. And I think we need to try to make a decision tonight for people, even if it's in the short term. I don't think any decisions that we make on distance learning can be a long-term solution because things are changing so rapidly. So it might be that we make a decision and it's a trial for a few weeks to see how that goes. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Okay, folks. We have a active motion on the floor. I don't think that there's enough information to move it forward in terms of giving a direction or basically an order to the administration to instill a modification to the course. But I think we need to hold that vote. However, I want to give an opportunity for the folks that have been very patient waiting. They've had their hand up. So I plan to go through this. Remember, the comments are going to be, please direct them towards the motion with respect to what's on the floor today. So Tyler Champlin, I know you had your hand up and put it back down. Are you still available? If you have a comment, put your hand back up, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I just had a question in regards to the definition of what that distance learning or virtual learning day would be, and how that impacts the mandated instruction hours, from the Rhode Island Department of Education. I don't know who would answer that, whether it would be Lisa with the definition and John, the attorney. I think Catherine kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit too, that other states, other districts in the state are doing it, and maybe we could look to them to figure out how they're doing it. But I would just like to get a definition of what that distance learning day is and how that fits in with that mandatory instruction hours.
I'm going to turn that to Superintendent Picard.
So it doesn't look the same way. For example, all the South County districts, the elementary school doesn't have that day. So they're all full in person. High school is where they had the flexibility, except for Wesley's the only one that has the one day on the Wednesday, and it wasn't approved. So we were a district that did do that Monday partial at the beginning of the year, and any district that put elementary school forward in their plan with not having 5 days was asked to revise. And then the governor allowed more time to plan and said you didn't have to start right away. You could do some scenarios leading up to that. We stayed the course with K through 8 a little bit, all of K, and we did pre-K a couple of days later. And then we made some shifts with high school. We waited a couple of weeks, but we didn't take until October 13th. Wesley doesn't have permission, and that has been the question from superintendents across the state. You know, what will that result in? And right now it hasn't resulted in anything. However, we have not received our state level allocations. So the question comes to bear, is that where that will come? So the South County superintendents, and like I said, we speak every Thursday, and they were all staying the course, and that meant elementary school, except for Westerly, was every day in person, as it was middle school. And then there was flexibility in the high schools. I think all of us have very different plans in high school, and they don't look, it depends on the district. So there was definitely more flexibility 9 through 12 throughout the districts, but nobody has permission from the state to do elementary.
Thanks, Gina. Paige Letty.
Hi, I just wanted to thank everyone on the school committee and the parents and families who have been so supportive and trying to come up with alternative ideas to support the teachers tonight. I was just wondering, something that I had been thinking about tonight, Gina, you had mentioned the early release days. It sounds like the one full day of distance learning would be very complicated for various reasons, and it wouldn't really allow a lot of planning time for teachers, which is something that I know we definitely need more time. So could you maybe speak to the logistics of an early release day? Is that something that we could do once a week or twice a month or something, where the students could get it in a full day in person that would count towards Ride's instructional day, and then the teachers would have that afternoon time free to work on distance learning plans and collaborate together?
That's exactly how it would work. You could think of it like the old late arrivals when we had snow, right? We had a 2-hour delay kind of thing. As long as we meet a certain number of minutes, and I don't have the time off the top of my head, then you would come to school as normal, and then we would release earlier depending on the time of day for the main campus, and then the elementary schools at a different time. And then the teachers would be just doing that. My understanding, and I as you know, I'm new to the district, is typically I think the early release days, the district had done them in the past. They were much more district led, where my thinking is it's not district led. It's exactly what Lisa had mentioned in her motion around, it's that my own classroom management time, planning my lessons. That early release time is for grade level planning across teams, across the elementary schools, content or department. This way it's a little cleaner way to get sort of everybody at a compromise.
Thank you. Betsy Alvarez.
Hi, my name is Betsy Alvarez, and I teach history at Charahoe High School. I'm also a parent of 3 children in the district: middle school, high school, and elementary. I was actually hesitant to speak tonight, but Donna Chambers, about a half hour ago, was asking to speak from teachers, and I wasn't actually planning on speaking, but the day-to-day is a lot. And I will tell you that I, since the second week of school, have taught every block, every day, 4 blocks a day, 7:25 to 2:15. And I don't mind doing it. I'm there for the kids. I'm there for my colleagues. And that planning piece is very important. I know every day I come home, I grade, I plan every lesson. No lesson can be used from previous years the way it was. And I've been teaching almost 11 years in this district. And the planning piece is very important. And, you know, weekends, Thanksgiving weekend, you know, tomorrow we have a day off. I'm planning. Saturday, Sunday, I'm planning. And so are my colleagues. I was forced to the past 2 days to work from home, and I'm very happy that our school district has afforded teachers to be able to work from home. My daughter goes to Ashway Elementary, and I had to teach from home so I could be with her. And, you know, teaching from home is much harder, you know, than being in person, but I don't know how we can get there. But I also have a student, my own child has an IEP, and his teachers need planning time. That to plan for students with needs, any needs, I don't care if it's reading, math, special needs, more severe, planning time is very important. And if the teachers can't plan appropriately, it doesn't matter if we're in 5 days a week. They need time to plan to be able to execute both in person and at home. And I'm happy that we're having this conversation. And my fear, both as a parent and a teacher of my own students and my own kids at my house, is that everyone's going to get burnt out. You see it in the classroom with the kids. And planning time is just really important. And we are covering, teachers are covering every day, every building, doesn't matter what grade level. And we just need time to be able to take a pause. I don't know if that means, I know everyone has different beliefs on what the pause should be. We're taking a pause in our economy. My husband works in a restaurant. They're taking a pause. We maybe need to take a pause in education and really think about what's best for the teachers and the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I saw, Malika Stelik, Vin Lefkowitz, and Kim St. Clair, you have lowered your hands. If you would still have a comment you want to share, please re-raise it. Lisa Rosso is next. Lisa?
Hi. I don't think that I need to continue on echoing how the majority of people are feeling. I agree with the teachers that they need this day. I've worked in the building, my kids go, I volunteer. My kids also have IEPs and RTIs. So I see it and I agree with them and I'm here for them and I support them. So I'm going to kind of look at the other side of this in terms of safety, because the reality is that in Rhode Island, 16 people died today that would not have died today if they did not get COVID-19. So the other side of taking the one day for the teachers to plan and for us to do our work at home is safety. It is one less day that our kids are being exposed, that our teachers and our families and our friends are being exposed, is one less day in the building for that. And I think some of the notes that have come up about changing is, I think doing it on the same day would be logistically easier than having different grades or schools or whatever do it on different days, because I mean, they're siblings. Logistically, that just seems like a nightmare. And as far as the early release days, I hear that and I think that something is better than nothing, but I also think it's not necessarily enough time. And also logistically, that's challenging. And it's, I mean, even less instructional time, really, if we're on a virtual day all day on Monday or whatever day is chosen. You know, that could be a full day of learning where the early release days are not. So that doesn't really appease that critique. And I have a whole list of notes from this meeting, but I think I'm going to end there because, you know, it's just not as easy as quote, pull your kid if you need to. So, you know, I'm here to support the teachers and staff.
Thank you. We have one more member of the public I'd like to give a voice to, and then I'm closing it to public discussion, and I'm going to put the vote to the committee. So Kim St. Clair.
Oops. Thank you. I'll keep it short. I'm a teacher at Hope Valley School. We are all extremely stressed across the district, as Vinny has said. I appreciate that this conversation is happening and that, yes, we do need time. If we were to get substitutes in, however, I think Mr. Giancarelli said it, that's going to cause teachers to then have to plan for a substitute, and that's just going to cause us to do more work. Betsy was right on the target when she was saying that in order for us to give that quality instruction, we need to be able to plan for that quality instruction rather than just trying to put something together, you know, the night before or over the weekend in order to get through the week. So the time for planning and collaborating with our partner teachers is extremely important. And the mental health of the teachers is, I think, even more important because we're all feeling it. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the words from all the faculty and staff who've echoed that. It's clear that something needs to be done. With respect to the motion, do any committee members need it reread? Or have you formed a position and you're ready to vote on it?
Sorry, could you please have it reread?
Sure. Lisa, would you mind, or do you want me to ask Donna Siskevich?
No, I'm sure Donna's taken lots of notes. I have it right here.
Yeah, I'm sure. Thank you.
Okay, so the amended motion is I make a motion to direct the superintendent in collaboration with building administrators to initiate a weekly distance learning day for the purpose of lesson development. Actually, it's dual modality lesson development, collaboration, and student family conferences.
Thank you. Okay, committee, those in.
Chair.
Sorry, David?
Yeah, sorry, I was raising my hand before you had the motion read again.
Oh.
Is it?
Okay.
I realize you're trying to move us to vote on the motion. I'm wondering, can we amend the motion? Can we propose still an amendment to the motion?
It's an open motion.
Okay.
It can be amended.
Right. So I know you're trying to move us along, but I'm just wondering, can we hear from just the building administrators who are here one more time on, because this thing was kicked around, our superintendent, who, this is why we hired a great superintendent with good ideas and seeing a big picture. She's pitched this idea of the early release as a good compromise. And I hear some people saying it's not great, but if we need something for a few weeks, it's something that I think is much easier for us to vote on tonight, to say, let's do some early release for a few weeks while we see if there's something more we can do. So what I want to propose is to amend the motion from a day of distance learning to a day of early release for the same purposes. Now, but what I just would love to hear from the administrators who are here, because they can tell me what I'm missing. If there's a reason why, I know Vin wasn't thrilled about the early release day, but what do the administrators see? Is that an option that, at least for till our next meeting, could give some short-term help to give the teachers a few hours?
Thanks, David. So before you formally amend the motion, would you like to hear from the administrators?
Yeah, I don't want to go to the trouble to get someone to second and amend the motion and vote on it if there's an administrator who raises a flag and says, that's terrible, please don't do that.
Okay, so I see Craig. I see your hand.
All right, David, I understand what you're doing, but I think your premise your amendment eliminates the original motion. So I don't think you can amend it in that manner.
Chair, I just want to say I agree with Craig. I think he's exactly right that
Yeah.
David, your idea, we can do it, but under this item, this agenda item, it's broad enough that if this gets voted up or down, you could actually introduce that anyway, independent of this. So don't let go of it. Keep going with what you want to do and get everyone's feedback, but Craig's right. It can't go. I don't think it goes with this one, but it doesn't mean you can't introduce it anyway.
So let me change the conversation then from amending the motion and say, in light of everything we're hearing, I still think I have to vote no for this exact motion, but instead I'd like to vote yes for a similar motion, but with an early release day instead of a distance learning day. And so, but before I, cause the train to go off the tracks again, I'd love to hear from our administrators who are on to tell me how they see that. We've heard from Gina that she thinks it's a good idea.
Yeah, but I think I would like to, since the motion is on the floor and that's going to take us in a different direction, I would like to close on this motion and then open the floor for you to engage that exact topic. Because it doesn't.
I know, but I might vote differently. So what I know, but I don't want to vote down plan A if I don't think there's plan B. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. Bill Day.
Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely right. We got a motion on the floor. We need to vote on it, and then we're going to go forward in another direction because we're going to be sitting here all night going back and forth. So you're absolutely right. We need to vote on this motion, and then if it fails, then we go with another one. So I move that we move the question. That's my motion.
It's been okay. Committee, we're actually going to vote on moving the motion. This requires a 2/3 majority in order to move it. What will happen is if you vote in the affirmative and we have 2/3, then we're going to go ahead and cease all debate and move the motion that's on the floor to vote. So I'm asking you, do you want to move the motion? Those in favor of moving the motion? I see 4 hands. Linda McAllister, Craig Luzon. Well, I'm putting my hand up as well too. Donna Chambers, counting 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 6. We don't have 2/3.
Ryan, I can't put my hand up either, but I have to agree with Bill. If his amendment isn't pertaining to the motion, he can't discuss it till that motion is cleared.
No, so I'm not discussing an amendment. So since it hasn't been moved, we can continue discussion. I'm not discussing an amendment. In regards to this vote for a distance learning day, I'd like to hear from the administrators if they think that an early release day would be an acceptable option before I vote on this.
Just so we're clear, I counted 6 affirmative votes to move the motion.
Did you get mine?
We need, I did. We needed 8.
Mr. Chairman.
So,
Excuse me,
Mr. Day.
Ryan, can you tell me who the 6 were?
So I had Ryan, Linda McAllister, Bill Day, George Abbott, Craig Luzon, and Donna Chambers.
Oh, thank you.
What Mr. Stoll wants to talk about is nothing to do with the motion we have on the floor. I don't know what he wants to talk about distance learning. We're not talking about distance learning in the motion we have on the floor. I don't know what we don't understand.
The motion has distance learning as part of the motion.
The motion's been going for 45 minutes and we've discussed in that context the merits of an early release as a possible option here. I didn't bring that up. It's already been discussed.
Right.
I'm just saying,
I'm sorry. I'm just going to say, as chair, I believe Dave Stahl's within his right to continue the discussion as pertains to the distance learning component of the motion.
Early release? No. We're talking about early
Mr.
release.
Stahl, the floor is yours.
So I'd like to hear from the building administrators who are here in regards to what the superintendent suggested as an early release as a good compromise, if they think that works.
I'm seeing head nods. Gina, I'd like to hear from you, and then Joe, Craig. weigh
Karen's
in.
got her hand up.
So yeah, we had proposed this back in October, but it definitely would get us through. I mean, giving the time for teachers to plan, because I think that's the goal. I think what we've heard is our teachers need time to plan, and the logistics of right now moving to this the Monday DL for November 30th is probably not where we're ready to move, based on the fact that the last day of school was today and everybody's already headed out the door. So we want to make sure that whatever we do is done thoughtfully. So I do think the early release is a way to get us to the next hurdle. But I know you have the principles.
Joe, Craig, Jen. I don't know if you're on. I think I asked you to
Sure.
unmute.
This has been quite a great conversation. I agree with a lot of things that have been shared. I do think the early release days would provide some time. I know it would not be equal to one full day for teachers to have that autonomy for planning and meetings and collaboration, office hours, but it would be something for them to be able to have additional planning time. So yes, I support early release days.
Okay, thank you.
I don't
Okay,
think I have
folks.
a hand. Can I talk next?
Sharon.
I
Yes.
kept looking for my hand. So I 100% agree that teachers need additional planning time. They're doing amazing things and it's a whole new world for them. I love the idea of adding early release day time because my heartstrings are pulled. Part of me is thinking from the perspective of a teacher, and part of me is thinking from the perspective of a working mom. And I know that that's really hard for families to figure out childcare for an entire day, but maybe it's more practical for them to work out a plan for part of the day. Our previous early release day structure was a little crazy, so logistically we'd have to look at that, but it would allow teachers to have that time to themselves to thoughtfully plan or collaboratively plan with their grade level partners, and it's so desperately needed. So thank you again for all of the opportunity to hear everyone's perspectives. What a great community we have. I'm so proud to be a part of it.
Thank you. Mr. Luzon.
I'm just going to throw this out there. Wouldn't it be prudent to approach the state to see what we're eligible for versus putting the cart before the horse? Doing one day every week, the state could turn around and say no. Maybe this is something I should say for the end for future requests for school committee meetings. But Gina, can you have the authority to do that with early release days, or do you need approval from the state?
For early release, we wouldn't, because we would make sure we hit the mandatory instructional minutes.
Which is 333 minutes a week.
It's throughout the week. They would have to. It would be like an early release for a snow day or late for snow. Like it's that time frame. I don't know the time frame off the top of my head, but there's a time, like I want to say like 11:30, or that they have to be in school until that point to count as a full day.
Okay, so getting back to my original premise, why are we requesting a full day? I'm going back to the motion now, because I agree with Bill. We've deviated from what the motion is, but the motion, we need approval from the state.
Not.
Who is that? I'm done. Somebody responded.
Was that John?
Yeah, as the superintendent has indicated, if you do the early release days, but still live within the minutes set by the state, you can simply say to the state, we are living by your rules. Whereas having limiting instruction one full day a week is a different situation where you would have to get state approval. And as the superintendent has indicated, other districts have not received approval for that. They're operating outside the rules, and we don't know what is going to happen with regard to state funding. I also do know at least one instance where on that 1 day a week, all the special ed kids, the ESL kids, they're coming to school. School is open for them to come in for services. Actually, I can think of 2 districts now right off the top of my head where they are operating without state permission, but they are at least going to be able to say those kids are being serviced.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Okay, I see. So actually, we're going to be coming up on the 10 o'clock
Chair,
hour here. Yes, sir.
I make a motion to suspend the 10 o'clock rule policy for the Terre Haute School Committee.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion made, seconded. Those in favor of suspension of the policy, so we can continue discussion. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold on. And we have 11. Motion passes. 7, 8. Thank you. I saw it. That puts us over the top for sure. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Ryan,
Okay,
I will need the name, please.
I'm. Hold on a second. Who's opposed? Bill Day. Anyone else opposed? Is there anyone abstaining? Any recusals? It was all in favor, Donna, except for Bill.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Vin Lefkowitz.
I just want to clarify the whole early release thing. When this was discussed to me in October, it was not a weekly or a bi-weekly, it was a monthly. And the reason why I said no is because past practice and what I think if you asked members how the early release days had gone in the past, I think a lot of members would have said that they were not really well received because they were, almost too controlled of an environment. So if the superintendent is proposing for the next 3.5 weeks to do early release days, Monday through Friday, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation about that. But there's a huge frustration on my part because in all the meetings that I sit through, we talk, we look like we're going to do something, and then something falls out at the end. What I've started to, and I haven't gone this route, but I feel compelled to kind of say it now, like the teachers and staff and whatnot, we're in the buildings every single day. Since this whole pandemic, the school committee has not had one in-person school committee meeting since, and you continue to have virtual. So I'm good at giving out challenges. My challenge to the school committee would be have a live in-person school committee and then make it virtual. And then you can experience what it's like for a teacher to do concurrent teaching on a daily basis if you have people at home and people in person. I think the more we continue to kick this down the road, we're just continually testing the limits of what could potentially happen. I've said that I don't want to go to a full DL, but if we continually push this down and we keep assuming that we're not going to get caught up in something, we may not have a choice and we may get forced to go DL. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, folks. I think the question was answered. Jerry, I want to give you an opportunity since other administrators had a chance.
Yep. I obviously acknowledge the challenge this has been for teachers and our families. You know, I don't keep any surprises from anyone. I'm an administrator in the school district. My wife is a teacher in the school district. We have children in another district. This has been our most challenging year as a family. I just wanted to let the committee know and the members here that the last thing a teacher said to me before I left the building today, those of you that don't know, I'm the director of the Career and Technical Center, was who is going to stand up and speak for us that we want to be in the building as much as possible. We want our kids in the building and we need them in the building. So we have at the Career and Tech Center now, we service over 800 kids, which is the part of the high school, obviously, but it's the largest number we've ever had at the Career and Tech. And we have 180 students coming from out of district to our career and technical programs. So whether we go to early release or distance learning days, that brings a lot of challenges with transportation. We have 10 school buses now that come to the front of our building before and after school every day, dropping off kids. So these early release days we talk about, we have to talk to our transportation partners to see if we can get the kids out at decent time, because those bus runs are challenging as it is. I can acknowledge the fact, though, you know, that one day of planning does seem like it would be worth it for our teachers. They are struggling. Every conversation you have with a teacher, how's your year going? How's it going? You know, what was yesterday like? And, you know, now they're just, stressed. You know, I walked in with a teacher today I haven't spoke to all year, a science teacher in the main building. I said, how's your year going? He just shook his head and he said, it's just different this year. It's stressful. You know, so we're acknowledging the fact from our families are stressed, our teachers are stressed, but it's a unique perspective from our career and tech building where, you know, it was funny. They said to me, the last thing was, who's going to stand up and fight for us that we want kids in the building 5 days a week? So there is that population that wants that component as well. So I just think that needs to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing. Okay, folks. Any committee members have final questions, comments? I see none. All right, folks, with respect to the motion that's on the floor, which is instruction to the superintendent to come up with a plan to go to one distance learning day, I'm paraphrasing. So how say you? Those in favor of the motion? Hold them up, please. Catherine Giusti, Lisa Macaruso are in favor.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
What are we voting on here? I thought
The motion made by Lisa. Bill?
I'm not sure I understand what we're voting on here now. 'Cause, I don't think the committee is sure what we're voting on either.
I think okay, fair enough. Can we do this a third time? Can you read the motion again, Lisa? Just so we make sure that everybody understands it before we vote it.
Is this just like salt in my wound? Like, read it
I
one
know,
more time, Lisa, before it gets voted down. All right, everybody. I make a motion to direct the superintendent in collaboration with the building administrators to initiate a weekly distance learning day for the purpose of teachers being able to do dual modality lesson development, collab with other teachers, and meet with students and families.
Thank you. And those in favor of the motion were Catherine and Lisa. Are there other committee members who are in favor of the motion? I see none. Those opposed to the motion? 1, 2, 3, that's Ryan, Craig, George, Bill, David. Hold on, let me go to the next page. Donna, Linda, Sheila, and Ms. McAllister. Thank you all. The motion does not pass, but I don't have to ask Lisa to read it a fourth time. Mr. Stahl, Floor is yours.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion worded exactly like Lisa's motion, except it has a weekly early release day instead of a weekly distance learning day.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Stahl, seconded by Lisa Macruso. This is open for discussion. Craig, do you have your hand up?
No, I did not.
Sorry, I thought you did. Bill Day.
I thought, my understanding was the discussion was that we were going to leave it to the administrators and the superintendent to plan on what's going to be covered on the early release day. And that motion would tie us into what is in the motion. So are we comfortable with that? Are we leaving it up to the administrators and the superintendent to formulate an early release program?
Yeah, it's a great question. Given the comments that Jerry made, I don't think it's going to be an easy thing. I'm fine supporting David's motion with respect to asking the administration to come up with a plan. The expectation is that it's implemented instantaneously, David, or do we see the plan before on the 15th?
No, to devise and implement immediately the plan. And in regards to the question Bill asked, it is a good question, Bill. I think it was worded generally enough. Collaboration, working on lesson planning, et cetera, that can look any way they want it to, however administrators and teachers and superintendent work that out.
Then my follow-up question on this, Gina, how long would it take you and your staff to address all the concerns and actually implement this?
So
Because Jerry gave me a list that made me nervous.
well, yeah, the busing would definitely, and the issue is like not everyone has a work day tomorrow, even though like for many of us, unless you took it off, it's a work day. It would be coordinating with Ned and the statewide transportation. North Kingstown, Westerly do their own, so we'd have to connect all the dots. We're thinking that in my original plan, when I proposed it to Vin, when it was, and he was absolutely correct, it was additional one a month at the beginning, was the Thursdays, because that was the day that we had in this district. It doesn't have to be Thursday. That was the original day, because in the early release days in the past have been on Thursdays. I wouldn't suggest November 30th being that, but I guess we could. I just need some time to walk it through with the admins to maybe start the following week, just to provide us a little bit of time.
Right. And when I say immediately devise and implement, obviously that's whatever is possible and doable and within reason. I'm not putting a day or a date on that. We leave that up to the administration.
Ryan, I think I'm on page 2. That's Sheila. I'm raising my hand.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I have Craig and Sheila, and actually, let me start with John.
I just do want to clarify that the superintendent also has an obligation to sit down and discuss this with the union. That's required by law. So the superintendent has to have that opportunity to sit down with Mr. Lefkowitz as well.
Thank you for reminding us. Absolutely, full compliance. Craig, and then Sheila.
Yeah, Chair.
And then Linda Lyle.
Chair, I agree with where you were going with this. The motion doesn't allow the administration any wiggle room per se. It doesn't allow wiggle room for sending districts. It doesn't allow wiggle room for negotiating with the union, as John has implied. I agree with your premise, which is basically make the motion, but add a back out clause for the administrators in case something comes up, because this motion implies do it ASAP. Boom, cut and dry. So.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Sheila.
My thinking is, I've been hearing from people that are stressed, that are very in favor of the of the pause. Is there a way that we could use the pause and just take a pause, the way that some of Rhode Island is, and use that to plan this correctly, and also give the teachers a break, because I think that, you know, it's so pent up now that you may need to do something kind of big like that to allow people to decompress and to get themselves together, and us to be able to plan this properly, because as we see, there are many moving parts.
Thanks, Sheila. Yeah, I think there's going to be some, there'd have to be some consideration for a formal pause. Linda Lyle?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think I was on page 2 too. So also, I thought this is where you were going with it. And I think Craig Luzon was talking a little bit about this. I mean, by the time with the Thanksgiving holiday and getting back to school and giving Gina a chance to maybe to sit down with her administrators, looking at all those moving parts like Jerry had suggested, I mean, maybe it'd be best if we had Gina propose a plan at our next meeting. I think this is just too important to sort of try to, you know, formulate this plan as we're working, you know, we're doing it right now. I think we need to kind of do it right. So, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? I see George and then Lisa.
Okay, am I on? Hello.
I can hear you, George.
I would, you can't hear me? Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. I would agree with Linda that this should be put off until the next meeting.
Thank you. Lisa.
So just my final comment on this in the evening. I'm standing strong behind Dave's motion. I'd like to remind everybody that we had wanted, or I had hoped to talk about this at the last meeting, but due to a technicality of the agenda, we had to move it to this meeting. And so we have people that are on this call that are staying with us past 10 o'clock saying, please, 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 something, something, something. I feel obligated as a school committee member to give them some finality before going into the next few days. So I am going to vote for David Stahl's motion. It's an idea, it's some direction, it's some relief. It's not highly detailed. It'll allow Gina and the admin to figure out the details, but it also tells the community and our teachers, okay, we heard you, and like, we're getting started. We will continue to talk about this every 2 weeks until the pandemic is over. We will. So no more kicking it down. Like, I like David's idea. He got broad support from administrators. Everyone, given the choice between the two options, told us, let's start there. So I'm voting for Dave's motion.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, I have Bill Day, then David Stahl, and then Linda Lyle and Craig Luzon.
Thank you.
So, Bill.
Yes, I just got a question for Vin, Gina, and John Anderson. Just a yes or no answer would be sufficient. Can you get this done next week and have it implemented in the first week in December?
I can absolutely make it a priority for next week.
I can also do that.
Thank you. Vin, are you still with us? If you could raise your hand, you'll pop to the top of the screen. I can unmute you. Thank you, sir.
I'll be honest. I mean, I think I'm past frustration at the moment. I don't know if it's just because I'm sleep deprived or not, but it's really frustrating to hear It said, well, can Gina and the administrators figure it out? And what that sounds to me is like just, early release days like we're used to, which were, over controlled.
Mr. Chairman, I asked if he could, yes or no, if he could get it done in a week's time.
Mr. Day, with all due respect, I've been on this call for 3 hours and 15 minutes. If I can explain my thought process, I'd appreciate it.
I'm just trying to move this on for you, sir. I'm trying to get this done by the 1st of December.
Gentlemen,
Well,
Vin
I've
and
been
Bill.
asking for this since August. So
Okay.
I would appreciate a little bit of time in the fact that, is it going to be something where we're going to have a full disclosure, or is it just going to be the administrators are going to plan the days like they used to, and we're going to go around like lemmings? We need time. And it's getting to the point where I just feel like, we're going to kick it down to the next meeting, and then we're going to push it to the first of the year. Like, at what point is the committee going to actually act on something?
The committee has a motion on the floor right now. The question to you, sir, is if you sit down with the superintendent and the administration and you're able to come to an agreement on what is undertaken during the early release time, do you see a path forward to supporting it next week for implementation the following week?
I don't know. I have to get in touch with my rep from Neary.
Okay. Then with respect to the motion, I think it's very clear that you're going to need union buy-in to support it. And so from that standpoint, I'm fine supporting this motion. I'm fine supporting it, but if the union isn't going to be in favor of it, then, and it's not going to serve the purpose of it, which is to give our faculty time, then it's a non-value add. And I'd like to have the superintendent be able to judge that and reject it unless it's going to meet our objectives. Is that okay with the committee? I'm seeing head nods.
Yeah.
Okay. So from that standpoint, Gina, if I believe the motion still is going to be voted on, it looks like it's favorable, but if it's not going to serve the purpose and the union's not going to support it, then you're not under an obligation from this committee to enact it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, folks, it is late. I see no further.
I think I was next on
Oh.
your list.
Sorry, Bill, and then David. Sorry, I got ahead of myself.
That's all right.
David Stahl, Linda Lyle, then Craig Luzon.
It's all right. I'm agreeing with you, and would just say to Gina, she knows the sentiment and the intention here and what we're trying to do, which is to give the teachers some time to do what they need to do. So I think we can trust her and her working through the rest of the administrators here to get to the point of what we were trying to do. I also just want to say, people say, well, we got to put on the brakes. This is a lot to implement. This isn't a lot to implement. We've jumped through major hurdles already in the last several months. We've implemented crazy, challenging, difficult things. We've talked about going to a day of distance. We're talking about hybrid models. We're talking about being everybody distance. This is the most simple of any of those options that we could possibly talk about, which looks like, it's snowing outside and we leave a couple hours early. I think the team can manage this. And I think it's going to be helpful and provide just a little bit of relief and a little bit of breathing room. And I think it's pretty simple and we can manage it. I think it's the least that we can do at this meeting. So let's do it.
Thank you, sir. Linda Lyle, and then Craig Luzon.
Thanks, Chair. I think I was misunderstood, and I like to just clarify. I don't want to kick it down the road. I'm voting for this. I think it's a great idea. I just wanted to give Gina and her staff time to create a thoughtful plan and make it what the teachers need it to be. And that's all I meant. I'm on full board on this, and I think it's a great idea. And I agreed with David and what everybody else said is it's probably it's at least what we can do to support our teachers at this point. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks,
Thank
Linda.
you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Luzon.
And I'm going to echo with what Linda just said, but I just want to add on, I'm concerned with what Jerry implied. I'm just hoping that Wesley, South Kingston, Narragansett, Coventry, North Kingston, and all these other sending schools don't have a problem with us changing bus times one day a week, because that could put a stop to this, but our motion doesn't allow that. So, and I also like to at least state that I would hope that all administrators with this additional planning time, that the teachers would be given the autonomy to determine what they're going to do with their planning time. Because I was getting very clearly from Vinny that it seems like this has always been micromanaged in the past. And I think that's a nice olive branch to extend to the union to allow the teachers to determine what they're going to do with their planning on their planning time. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. And folks, we have a committee meeting in a couple weeks. I think it is more than appropriate to follow this up at that time, not gating the deployment per the motion, and then seeing if there are any type of catastrophic issues that have come to light that the superintendent needs to inform us of, and then we can then readdress this issue. Okay, folks. I see no further hands up. I'm going to close discussion on this. I'm going to move the motion to the vote. Those in favor of the motion, which is to give Superintendent Ricard an opportunity to engage with legal and the union to come up with an early release plan deployable the week after next. Those in favor of that motion, please raise your hand. Thank you. I see a lot of hands. Let me get to page 2. Hold on. Thank you all. Any opposed? I see none. Any abstaining or recusals? Thank you. I'm counting that as unanimous. That closes out business for this evening. I thank all of you for participating. Appreciate the input from the faculty and the staff and the parents and the administration and the committee members. So thank you all very much for that discussion. Next up is consent agenda. So who needs what pulled?
A1, A2.
Are you sure A2?
I thought there was somebody not here.
I think only Clay was missing for A2. George was missing for A1.
Okay, A1.
Okay. Anything else that needs to be pulled, team? For committee members, just unmute yourself and call out. Okay. I see nothing else pulled. Therefore,
Chair, I make a motion to move the remainder.
Thank you. Motion to move the remainder by Craig, seconded by Linda Lyle. Those in favor of moving the remainder? Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions, recusals? No, it's unanimous. Thank you all.
Chair, I make a motion to approve A1, the executive session minutes of November 10th, 2020, approval of executive session minutes of October 27th, 2020.
Thank you. Motion made by Craig, seconded by Linda Lyle. This is open for discussion. Anybody? Nope. Closing discussion. Those in favor of minutes? Thank you. Those abstaining? Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Appreciate it. I didn't see any recusals and or opposition, so I'm counting that with only one abstention. Perfect. Next up.
Subcommittee reports. So we have a few subcommittee reports, making sure I'm not on mute. Our first was the Anti-Racism Task Force. Our second meeting was November 4th. It was actually another wonderful meeting. The RIDE liaison, Kate Schultz, came. I know you have the minutes in your packet. She talked with the task force about what the state regulation obligation is to curriculum. Jane Daly was there as well to speak on what the district already has in place around curriculum. We also had subcommittee reports around, we have 3 work groups from that task force: policies, practices, and curriculum. And just this morning, I sent out a survey, or was it yesterday? I can't remember now. I think it was yesterday. A survey to our students who were interested in the task force to get their willingness to come be a part of that work. So we're gauging that interest, and that survey is due back to us next week. Our next task force meeting for the Anti-Racism Task Force is December 2nd. We also have an upcoming Health and Wellness Subcommittee meeting on December 8th at 4 o'clock. And the Anti-Racism Task Force is at 7 on the 2nd. The Tri-Town enrollment data is in your packet, along with the enrollment by class for the school. We also had Dorothy pull those numbers for you so you could see the in-person learners in elementary school versus the distance learners. So you can see that basically our classrooms are at a good place right now. There's no major catastrophes or no enrollment. There are 2 classrooms at Richmond that are at the 23, which is the contractual number, and 1 at 21. So I'll be recommending things in the budget for next year, but that's the only sort of level of concern that we have. But right now we actually have 5 grade 4s, and it looks like it will need the 4th grade 4 for next year at Richmond to ensure the enrollment. But other than that, our enrollment numbers are the class size is very, very good. We have I had our first Superintendent Education Advisory Panel, which was more of a getting to know each other meeting, and really thinking through how that panel would be an advisory board to myself, along with Martha Dion, who's co-chairing that with me as Teacher of the Year. So that will be a long-standing position for our Teacher of the Year to do that work with me, so we can get that input from our teachers and our support staff. So we met last week, and we were going to start again in January, but they want to meet again in December. So I sent out a doodle poll, and I'm happy to do that. I think I was encouraged by that because, as you know, and I don't have to tell you, we have exemplar teachers who want to do what's best for their colleagues and are looking to be very solution oriented. So I'm really proud that they wanted to continue that work with me. And then the upcoming events, we have no school students and staff, as you know, this week. Tomorrow is very limited staff at the main office. And then across the district, on November 30th is Richmond School Improvement Team meeting. That will be virtual at 5:30. On November 30th, there's the College Financial Aid virtual workshop at 6 p.m. and people must pre-register. December 2nd, as I told you, was the Anti-Racism Task Force. December 8th is the Health and Wellness. And then Ashway and Hope Valley. Ashway has pictures on the 7th, Hope Valley PTO on the 7th at 6:30. Charahoe Middle School PTO at 7 o'clock on the 9th of December. And then we end of our first trimester grading period for elementary school on December 11th.
Perfect, thank you. For the next item, it is going to be a request for future agenda items or legal opinions. George Abbott.
I just wanted to get some information about the anti-racism task force. Could I ask a question now?
So you want to get information about
From the superintendent or Lisa?
what type? Yeah, so I guess go
the
ahead and ask your question.
Okay. I just wanted to know if there's any effort to increase minority hiring, if that's part of the effort.
Why don't we have that as an agenda item and that can be reported out? But I'd like to give, because right now that'll turn into a discussion. So with respect to that, I'd like to give the task force and specifically the chair of the task force an opportunity to report as a progress update what is being worked on and what areas have been covered. I don't know when an appropriate time for that would be, but I'd like to put that out there. I think that would address your question, George, and then that would allow you to ask direct questions.
All right. I was on
At
the action committee at DCYF, and a major focus of that committee was to increase minority hiring, and we made some progress in that regard.
Perfect. That would be a good discussion point then. I see Bill Day and then Craig Luzon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a small request on maybe the first meeting in January as to the cost, the increased costs of our heating with the pandemic situation and with the windows open and stuff like that. Just kind of a comparison between what we spent from the start of last year's opening to the start of this year's opening with the windows open. That's it.
Okay. Increased fuel costs. Gotcha. Mr. Luzon?
Yeah, you know, I agree with what Vinny implied earlier. It just seems like a lot of these meetings, we spin our tires and we go nowhere. And we do tend to kick the can down the road a bit. I'm hoping that somebody can reach out to either RIDE or the almighty Oz up in the State House, and maybe they can give us a book on the proper way to what's allowable. Because it seemed like tonight things were, well, we can't do that because we need approval from the state. I'd like to know, have they come up with some paperwork on showing us what is allowable and what is not allowable? Can anybody reach out to the state to find any regulations, requirements, and then at least this be presented to us so when we have a conversation and we want to take action, we know what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do? Does that kind of make sense?
Crib notes of RIDE.
Yeah, they're like.
All right. Why don't we take it offline and Gina put some thought into it, and if there's something simple in terms of guidance in that area, let us know. If not, we'll dig in and engage John. David Stahl.
Yes, Chair, this was not an agenda item or a legal opinion. It was a question on the reports. But we passed by the reports. I know we're trying to be fast. In the Anti-Racism Task Force report, I know we talked about in this context the name change, because originally it was being called Anti-Racist Task Force. We talked about making it Anti-Racism Task Force. I can't remember if we actually had a motion or if we did it, but that was the consensus here, was to change that name. I noticed when I read their report earlier that they had a motion within their meeting to change their name to Anti-Racism Task Force. Now, so either that's a redundancy, in other words, it was already done here, or it was done there. I just want to clarify that, and because I want to make sure that this board doesn't form committees that then go and change their names or redefine themselves. I just want to clear that up. It's just a little minor sort of clerical thing, but it could become important on other issues or with other committees. So when I saw we changed their name, and then I saw they held a meeting and the committee that we appointed changed their own name at their meeting, that's problematic for me, just as a point of order.
Yeah, understood. My takeaway from our discussion on that was that was going to be the first action that they took. So I think I anticipated that, but I could be wrong. I don't recall. I'd have to go back to the notes to see if we discussed that. But why don't we dig into that and come back and touch on it at the next meeting?
And I don't remember either. And either way, it's what we all wanted. So I don't have to complain about that. If Donna or somebody else could help us just look at the notes and just make sure, so that we know, making sure for a point of order that committees know what they're doing.
Yeah, no,
And we did not change, we did not vote to change the name. It didn't pass. The subcommittee, Joe Reddish brought it before the subcommittee. They voted to change the name, and it is in their minutes that were sent out. I can resend out the minutes on that vote.
Yeah, so, but Donna, so let's take this offline, but for the next committee meeting, let's make sure we touch on how the name was changed, and if this committee, the school committee, had approved that. I thought that we
No,
had,
this
but,
school committee did not. They kept the name. Lisa's motion had anti-racism. That was her motion. So you've approved her motion with anti-racism. The motion did not have it to change the name.
Okay.
So
Then let's take it up as an
racism.
agenda item next time to see, specifically talking about whether or not subcommittees can take such action. Because that seems
Is
to be
John
the question.
still on? I guess not.
So Chair,
Okay.
for the sake of time then, let me add an agenda item following whatever day that's on, right? So that if the school committee needs to adopt the new recommended name of the Anti-Racism Task Force, that we can just do it all in one. All right, thank you.
I think that's well put.
And my
Thank
only
you.
concern, Ryan, I don't know how long that will take, but we do have the the Open Meetings Act scheduled for the December meeting. So I don't know what else will be coming up on that, but that's usually 45 minutes to an hour. So just to give you a heads up, they're already scheduled. We have to do it for the lawsuit we were in.
Awesome.
So we have that scheduled for December, just so everybody is aware. That's going to take a good portion of your meeting. Okay?
Yeah. Understood. Thank you. Appreciate the reminder on that. Any other agenda items, George?
Following up, I had requested a report from the environmental people concerning the oil spill. And
That's right.
one new request. Never mind, just forget it for now.
George, Ned did reach out to GZA. They are compiling a
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, the other thing is, someone requested, they wanted to know if there's any savings related to COVID-19. You know, overall, it's going to be costly. But could we get an update on any cost and savings related to COVID-19? I think we had an update a few months ago, but just to update, you know, the ongoing cost and if there are any savings related to COVID-19, a breakout.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Okay. Any further committee members with questions or requests for future agenda items? Robin, I do see your hand up, but I'm intentionally not calling on you because it's not the right section. I apologize. No further questions, or I'm sorry, future agenda items. In that case, this brings us to the end.
Chair,
Yes, sir.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn, seconded by Linda Lyle. Those in favor of adjournment? Counting that as unanimous. Donna Chambers voted twice for the record there. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it tonight. It was a long meeting, but it was a good meeting.
One
Take care.
thing,